because I do think it's important that we fit it in, and we are slightly behind schedule. What we don't get to in this year's capital budget, we will just add to the agenda in December. So I'm not too concerned about not getting to those things, but this development charge is a bit more time sensitive, and we did commit to giving council the opportunity to review those capital plans. So this is actually the very last page in your agenda, but I also printed it out and gave a copy to everyone, and it ties into this sort of 5-year capital for each division that's also summarized in the agenda. But if we focus on this document, you have it in your 5-year as well.
In my stack?
Yeah, it should be the last few pages there. So if you focus on this document, council will recall that we made the decision to not include the general services in the development charges calculation. So while they are included here because they are technically calculated in order to determine what the fully calculated charge is, there's a few services that we're excluding. So we can go through the first page and basically take that one out. That is library, fire services, police services, and outdoor recreation. These services may come up again when we're looking at that CBC bylaw sometime in 2020, but all that will be brought back forward to you again. So we're not going to necessarily focus on that page. From the second page, really the only item in there is the debt on the Julie MacArthur Regional Recreation Center. The reason why this one has increased so much from the previous development charges study is a change in the way that Hampson applies DCs from Watson. Watson splits recreation to collect on commercial as well, whereas Hampson says no, outdoor recreation is fully the residential development that goes into that calculation. So the fee is higher because they're splitting it over fewer classes, but also we had lower than this. The growth expectation is lower than the last study. So those are the two reasons that the development charge associated with indoor recreation is so much larger in this study from Hampson than it was in the study from Watson. But again, it's still the same project, and it's to recover a portion of the debt on the rec center, assuming that a portion of that rec center capacity was built to serve a growing community. Growth studies, anything that is related to a soft service or a general service comes out of here, and really the only thing that stays will be the official plan and any future development charges studies. Transit and waste collection, again, we took those out. So this page, for the most part, which is page 2 of those sheets, we don't need to focus on for the development charges calculation. The next two are the two that have the projects that basically make up what is left in our DC. Dennis will be going through anything that relates to the current year in his summary, but if there are any projects here that council, basically what we look for from council is an intent, not a commitment, is the way that Stefan put it. So we're looking, when we say this is our capital plan, it's with council's intent to move forward with this plan. There may or may not be some timing changes or things like that, but for the most part, you agree with these projects. That doesn't mean that you're committed, and there may be opportunity in the future to exchange one for another and still use those development charge fees for something else. So my hope was we could go through this in more detail with the 5-year plan, but if there's anything that really jumps out at you that you don't think belongs here, I should be letting our consultant know sooner than later so that we can get those fees updated in order to pass the bylaw in December, and that is a time-sensitive exercise, so we really are looking for that feedback as soon as possible.
So technically, if we take these out of here, then it means that they're going on to the taxation.
So just to explain it, you've got in this chart, there's the gross cost. That's our estimated total cost of the project.
Yep.
We take away from that any known grants
Yep.
or anticipated grants, and we're left with the net municipal cost. The benefit to existing shows that what is the benefit of that project to our existing resident? That is not going on to the developer. The portion that goes on to the developer is really what's left. So you're right. If we take anything off of here, for example, if we were to move the 10th Street Bridge, That would be an additional $500,000 that now needs to be funded by our taxpayer as opposed to being able to allocate development charges against that project. So it's that last column that makes up what is going towards the development charge calculation.
Good. Go ahead.
So while people are still reading the sheets, the first one, for instance, then that I see on here is stormwater separation program. But this is entirely, to me, an existing condition that we're trying to rectify, because any new development, it's prohibitive to do that anymore. So that to me is one that we could remove. I don't see why it's part of development charges trying to correct existing problems. They're there, but we have to fix it.
So for everyone's purposes, this is on the wastewater section, and it's the third line, the stormwater separation program.
Right, sorry, my bad
No, that's
there.
okay. And it's showing, of the total $1 million total project anticipated cost, which is actually spread out over several years, $900,000 is shown to benefit the existing taxpayer, and $100,000 is allocated to that future taxpayer that is not yet here.
Any other
Like,
comments?
would I make a motion to remove
Yeah,
that then?
yeah, if
Okay,
you'd
that
like
would be
to.
the procedure here?
Yeah, I would think that would be,
I think we're just not a community like Shelburne or Orangeville that's going to grow because we're a commuter city. Everything we place in here is a potential inhibitor to us developing and growing. We've got to watch every line item. And I think this is one where we're trying to correct an existing situation more so than it's something that's going to be created. This isn't like we're going to have to repave 16th Avenue from 8th Street to 16th Street because it's falling apart fast because of development up there. Or it's not, but I mean, I think if you drive it, you see it. But I think this is one that I would move out of the DEC calculation.
Okay, Travis?
Can we get like a little, excuse me, sorry, a little bit of clarification on what the stormwater separation program is?
The storm separation is to try and separate, trying to disconnect buildings and properties that directly empty into our storm system. And the whole idea is to actually make it go over land or somewhere else or be contained on the property itself without it entering our system and the capacity it has there. And there's also, when we talk about separation, we want to make sure there's still some areas too where we have combined sewers that we're looking at as well. So for this specific case, I think it's $100,000 that's being attributed to the DC charges based on this.
so it says just 2020 here, but it's actually meant to capture the whole 20-year period covered by the plan, so that would be $1 million anticipated towards this program over that entire program time, of which 10% is allocated to future growth.
And right now, that's averaged about $50,000 a year. I mean, it's ongoing. So it does impact directly, well, it does impact directly, I guess, the development charges in the sense of what the costs are to the current residents and future residents. And it creates capacity within the system by doing this, that the future development can take advantage of.
I had that discussion a few years ago that Windsor was old like us, and they had a whole bunch. Well, actually, Matt, it was probably at the time talking about lead pipes, and that Kitchener and places that had developed had removed a lot of it from their core because they needed to connect with them as they expanded out this way. And so, in fact, the new development is hooking up to.
That is correct. And by separating them, we increase the capacity of the existing pipes, and the other option is tearing everything up and enlarging the pipes, which would increase the cost substantially more than the $100,000 that's being used now for development charges, or attributed to development charges.
Richard?
So if we remove this from the development charge calculation, the net effect is going to put the 100%, the full $1 million onto the tax base, wastewater, rather than having that extra 100,000, which we can utilize in this case.
Exactly.
So I fail to see why we would do that.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. Looking like we've got a long way to go in the next couple hours here, so I'm going to start hustling people to try and get their thoughts out a little faster, a little more concise, and we'll keep pushing forward. So
Sorry,
I maybe should have been pushy at 9:30 this morning, but so I'm going to call the question. All in favor of Scott's motion? Scott, opposed? Everyone else, it's defeated. Okay, thanks, Kate. Anything else? Anyone else have anything else they think shouldn't be on that list? I guess is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is basically the list that council had received back in October when Stefan first came to council to give us that preliminary rundown of development charges. If anything, staff have already removed some projects, but these are the ones that remain.
Boy, you guys are optimistic, thinking that Moores Hill is going to last to 2028. Anyway, that's a side thing.
So challenging to know what decision we're going to make in 2028. I'm just going to say this out loud. I know you want me to be precise, but I'm be honest with you, it's struggling to decide what major capital projects need to happen in 2020. How do we think about that the waterfront trail development in 2028, that's $500,000, is a benefit current? There's a struggle here to make a plan, a capital plan, basically, for the next X number of years, when who knows what happens next year. Kelso Beach Campground electrical could be $750,000 or $250,000 over. We're debenturing for another period, and next thing you know, it throws off our capital completely.
Not to confuse things too much, but I did want to just reiterate, all of those outdoor recreation projects that are in here don't really need to be discussed at this time because we've already removed that service from this. So there was sort of a timing here. We brought forward the original list of projects in October. Since then, Operations and Engineering has brought their sort of capital plans through their committee. So we really are, you're not committing to doing these projects. You're not committing to necessarily even the years that they take place, but that you have an intent to support the projects is more what we're looking for. And again, we're really just focusing on the roads, water, and wastewater services.
Richard?
Basically, what we're doing is committing to collect DCs for those projects, and if we change somewhere down the road, those DCs will be applied to...
There's opportunity to substitute projects, and in the event that you don't do the project and the funds stay in the development charges reserve, that'll be taken into account in the next development charge study update, and any future project costs will be, the burden on the developer will be reduced by any money already held within the reserves.
Okay, can I, hello, there we are. Do you need a motion then for this?
Sure. There was a motion to recommend to... We had a motion to recommend to Hempson to move forward with the capital program. If they have summarized, that would be helpful.
I'll move that.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, going to call the question. All in favor of Richard's motion, and that is carried. Good. Thanks.
We have a great partnership with the Owen Sound the Owen Sound Soccer Association in the operation and management of soccer complex. So there's several projects that are partnership shared 50-50. The first one is soccer complex trees, and this is $3,000 each. It would be shade trees at the complex. Providing Wi-Fi at the complex, $2,000 each. And then the slit drainage. So we did the drainage plan in 17 and 18. We did the first field in 19. The slit drainage has worked very well. It allows you to get on the field a little earlier in the spring, and it also minimizes the time for the field to recover after a rain. So $10,000 each for that. Parks General Trails, this is a project out at Kelso Beach to get the trail pulled back onto our own property and rehabilitate some of that trail. Greenwood Cemetery Office. This is thought to be the oldest home in Owen Sound, used as a cemetery administration building. It's where we meet with families. The basement provides storage and access for staff to the building. There's a designated substance survey underway looking at mold, asbestos, lead paint. Sorry. This project would do that abatement and repair the foundation that's currently leaking. The parking lot drainage right at that back door, when it rains, this is what it looks like. And so this project would be to get positive drainage outlet in that area and get the water away from the building where it seeps in that back door. Thank you. Next, the cemetery water system. This is something that's really important to people who care for plots at Greenwood. What we're recommending is a contribution to a reserve over 3 years. We need to first understand what sections have failed and the best and most efficient way to tackle that problem and come forward with a solution through committee. So this is a contribution to reserve, understanding there would be a further report through committee with details. Greenwood Cemetery bench, you see a picture of the bench here, and this would be upgrading those to the new accessible benches. Waste receptacles in Greenwood, they're the wooden slats, and this would be upgrading those to the current. Greenwood Cemetery Chapel, this would be the this would be the design work. We would engage the public. We're currently, I'll just back up, trying to hurry too much. We've engaged the public through the Greenwood Cemetery Master Plan. One of the really important initiatives that we're hearing from the public is the restoration of the chapel, probably as an indoor columbarium space. So $30,000 would be used in 2020 to do the design work. We would bring a report through committee on the business plan and the future capital investment required to make this happen. Harrison Park Tot Lot, unfortunately, this was a project you funded in 2019. I was unable to secure a grant or a partner. I'm bringing the project forward again. The Tot Lot outside the restaurant is certainly a well-used space. It's aged, it's well beyond the lifespan. The surface is not, doesn't meet current standards in terms of impact attenuation. What we would be proposing is a design-build type solution, very much like what we're doing at Timber MacArthur Park.
Pam, can we go back a slide?
Sure.
This is one where, okay, so 30 to do a study. I mean, is there,
But design.
well, is there anyone who thinks that once that design is implemented and all the building and rehab is done, that it would be anything less than 500,000? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is this the start of a $500,000 rebuild? And if so, can we maybe think about whether we really want to save the building? You mentioned public really likes the idea of keeping it, or
So through the cemetery master plan, it has been identified as an important structure and something that the public really, and I don't want to preempt the conclusion of that master plan process, but certainly the public supports sort of retaining that chapel as a significant heritage building and putting it to a purposeful use. So the idea would be that we would do a business case through community services. How much would you sell a niche for? How, you have to stabilize the structure, repair it, but it would be fairly, it's a fairly simple building. The roof is new, and then looking at the business plan through committee on implementing that design.
I don't mean to prejudge the business plan. I'm sure they can make a bit of money selling, I forget how to pronounce the name.
Columbarium niches.
I personally think we have to deal with some of our buildings and just say we can't afford them. And I'm afraid that this 30,000 is just a step towards $500,000 or more, and that's my concern. So I would move to strike this one. Can I ask, just for clarification, the roof you said is fairly solid now?
New roof.
So by killing it for a year, we're not hurting the building if we kill this study for a year?
It's fairly, yep, it's
So I
not
stand,
leaking.
okay. So I move that we strike this one,
Okay,
20D64.
further discussion? Richard?
I'm not going to vote in favor of that motion. I think that this building, I remember 25 years ago when I was still working in the news media, covering this story and the fact that they wanted to refurbish the parish up there, and here it still sits in the condition it's in. I think that, the River Precinct Plan is a great idea, a great example of a kind of a project where you can go forward and do your design and then wait until the time is right to actually do the work. And I think that the time has well passed to deal with this building, which is a significant heritage building in the city of Owen Sound. And again, having a study done does not mean that we are approving having the work done. That'll come back to us for a further decision at another budget session.
Go ahead, Carol.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was this not one of the buildings that we were wanting to see if we could get a heritage designation for, and it's in process? Like the evaluation and the
You're
program?
correct.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Can I make one other comment, Your Honor?
Yeah,
Your
quickly,
Honor,
yes.
sorry.
I'm not we just
You're
talked
worse.
about that. I'm not getting paid enough.
With people screaming at us to get their taxes down, of all the projects, you would think a cemetery building such as this, which serves no useful function at present, may serve a modest marginal function in the future, you would think that this is one thing that we could just decide is a redundant building, and I'll leave it at that.
Go ahead.
And when you say the public wants it, that's 30 people, right? That was,
think-
that was the number of people that responded to the survey.
I think we had about 80 responses to the survey and about, 52, and maybe about 40 people attended the open house.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is defeated. It stays in.
St. Julian Park has a small play structure. It's a sand base now. It doesn't meet current standards, and it would be adding wood fiber, the engineered wood fiber, to provide the impact attenuation.
Okay.
Planning,
Brian
sorry.
had his hand up.
I would move not to do that. And it's only $7,000, but I think we have to talk, that's one of the places that we need to talk about.
So motion is on the floor. Can you wind that back for me, Brianna? Just one?
No.
Oh, Pam? Okay, further discussion? Richard?
I guess my only question would be, are we leaving ourselves open to some liability here? I remember when I was on the school council at Bayview, we every year had to spend a fortune keeping the play equipment and the pit area around it up to code. So I guess my only concern would be, what are we letting ourselves in for if we don't do that work?
My question is, from time to time we do like mulching maybe with some of the wood that comes into our
Compost.
compost?
Yeah, so
Can you use that?
You can't. So the material that's used on playgrounds, believe it or not, is an engineered wood fiber. So it's provided at a certain depth, and it has so when you fall on it, it has a certain impact attenuation. So it's different than the wood mulch that is at the compost suitable for gardens.
Okay, so motion is to remove that. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Quickly, going to call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so opposed is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, whichever, so it's carried.
So this next project moves over to planning, and it would be interpretive plaques, continuing on and telling our story. There's an idea that we would do an interpretive plaque for the Manitoba. Official plan, 5-year review. Actually, this is one of those projects. The RFP just closed, and Michelle awarded the project actually under budget last evening. Digitizing building plans for Amanda. So along with your records management, you can see our rolls of building plans. So the idea, they have a permanent retention, so we have to keep them forever. The idea is to digitize these plans for records management.
Scott?
It just says, it references the convenience of going to the field with an iPad or laptop device and being able to utilize them. Is that the primary purpose over just storage? Because when I looked at that, I thought, well, they're old records, so how often is he taking a 17 or an 18 drawing out? Once the building's finished, the building's finished. So that's the question I had is, it's old and it's antiquated and it's not the way we do it now, but is it a big deal? Because we're not using those old rolled up drawings that used to always see the building, you know, the building inspector headed out of the building and he had all the armful of long rolled up design, but.
Right. It's actually surprising how much we refer to as-built drawings. So for example, McLean Engineering Balfour, seeing those drawings that were 20 years old as they do their new edition is really important. So, and now we are using tablets in the field because we're having builders submit their plans digitally so our staff can go to the field with those tablets.
Welcome to the 90s. Go ahead.
Zoning bylaw review, so this is a mandated review following our official plan. We'll start it in 2020, hopefully. Amy's being ambitious that she'll finish the OP this year and then undertake the zoning review. And I would just stress for you that up-to-date current policy goes hand in hand with great development.
Scott?
Here's one I would move to remove from next year's budget. Let's do the official plan. We agreed on doing the official plan last year, and that didn't occur yet. It got carried forward. I'd like to see the official plan executed and finished, and we look at the zoning bylaw review for 2021 when we have got the official plan done.
Okay, so that's a motion to remove it from the list for 2020. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that carries.
Next is the wayfinding signage, and our official plan and our strategic plan really do emphasize the importance of clear directional signage to get people to important landmarks in and around the city. You can see our current signage is a little bit dated and certainly is in need of a refresh. We've applied for a RED grant, so this project is contingent on being successful in that grant, 69 from taxation, including the posts and installation, and then 21 from the grant.
Scott?
It sounds like you're tired of looking to your left and having to say that name.
No, that's fine. Just keep it going when
I
you get
have
it.
this one circled. I would like to see a plan come forward through economic development or community services before we allocate $90,000 to this. I don't mind us proceeding with a grant. We could ask for $21,000 or $40,000, whatever a grant might be out there to fund all of this. The complaint I get right now, actually, it's funny, and I think it used to be funded by, or it might be Blue Water Steamatic. I feel like there's an old fastball team that put the sign up. But when people come into Owen Sound on Highway 26, there's an old sign on the right-hand side, and it's dilapidated, and it's back in the trees. I get more complaints about that sign than I do about the quality of the new signs. And further to that, it's right before Kia on it. So
It's not
anyway,
a sign.
it's 2019, 2020, and so many people are guided by their cell phones now, and the in-car guidance system, it takes you everywhere. Like, I don't travel to a big city now where I'm really paying attention to that many signs. I'm told how to and where to and why to get to somewhere. So this one, I think, is a huge expenditure with no
So you're
defined
making, are you
plan
making a motion?
to move it.
You've made a motion to remove it. Okay, discussion. Brian?
Dennis, when you did the presentation to the DIA, are these the signs we're talking about, or are they completely different? Not even related?
I'm sorry, but that was the presentation, like, say, sometime
Yeah, we
early
were talking
spring?
about like signs, like, I know these
We
are
were looking,
direction.
we were looking at the
directional
signs really
signs.
related to the parking lots, municipal parking.
Yep.
But again, a place like, a good example, I think it was Orangeville, that their sign program does include something like this as well. And it's about making ornate, and you get a lot of people who are seniors who do come to our town.
Yeah.
And they don't rely on GPS and that sort of thing. It's visual for them.
Right.
Go ahead, Wayne.
If I could, Your Worship, and certainly councillors always can make whatever decision they want. I think from what I have seen of the signs that have been brought to my attention, if you're not going to go ahead with new signs, we should take down the old signs. They make a very poor impression. It's one thing to make no impression at all, if that's the route we go, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but to have, quite frankly, shabby-looking, beaten-up signs out there isn't putting the image out that I believe we want in this community. So I would suggest strongly new signs, or quite frankly, give us the authority to start taking down some of these old dilapidated signs.
Yeah, just to finish, I think these signs are very, very important. I think we should be replacing them.
Richard?
Yeah, I agree with Wayne. I mean, I hear lots of comments about the way the signs look presently, but I do support new signs. I mean, we live in an era where we're trying to promote our community as a foot-friendly community. We don't want people to be in their cars all the time using their GPSs to find their way around. We want them to get out of their cars. We want them to walk around. We want them to put their devices down, Councillor Tamming, and enjoy what's around them. We spend a lot of time and energy and money in Owen Sound to make a beautiful community. And I think people should be able to find their way around, because when the apocalypse comes, the digital apocalypse now I'm talking about, they will not be using their devices. They will need the signs. I know I'm hurrying, Your Worship.
Carol?
There was some discussion about taking it back to committees for review. Could the accessibility committee, should that decision be made, be included?
Large capital projects, we would go to committee with the design. Brent's identified 26 locations where the signs would go. We would certainly look for input from the committee before we went to manufacture.
Thank you.
And Travis, did you have your hand up, or did you give up?
I gave up.
Good. So do I have a motion on the floor? I do. To remove this. All in favor? 1, 2. Opposed? Everyone else, so it's defeated.
Okay, moving on to facilities. The vegetative roof assembly was removed from the City Hall contract at the time of construction. The structural work was done to support a green roof. The east and west atriums are wonderful meeting spaces. They're where we meet with the community and developers. They oversee the downtown, but the aesthetic of the roof from these rooms is not great. This is an opportunity to sort of take on a green initiative and be a leader by adding then 10 millimeters of poly, drainage mat, filter fabric, 4 inches of topsoil, and then native seed plants. And then 18 inches of river stone at the edges with pavers where you would be able to get out on that roof. So significantly less than it was presented at the City Hall as part of the overall contract, but $55,000. The work would be done by the same contractor who did the roof repairs at the time the building was restored to not impact warranty.
Somebody had their hand up, John?
I move to strike this item. Pam, I appreciate the point. To me, it's a nice-have, and I'm just looking for the words here. It's basically an aesthetic argument. The aesthetics is not pleasing, and I give you that. It's not ideal. I don't mind sitting in those rooms and looking down. I think people expect to see a bit of post-industrial aesthetic. And I just, the other question I have, Pam, is how this gets rated high in all candor, okay? Because by definition, it's an aesthetic thing, right? So to rate something high, to me, suggests that it has to happen lest something critical fail. Just saying as a general. So I move to strike, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Brian. Thank you.
So I'm against that motion because we just did the renovations at City Hall because it was put off for 100 years and really needed to be done. And this finishes it off. And just as a reminder, we have weddings there. We have weddings that look out over top of Main Street, and this is what they look at. And I think that would really add to it and would help with rentals.
Did you have, go ahead.
I just don't, like, how much did we spend renovating City Hall in the last council? It was, what, $8 million?
6.2, sorry, 6.8 construction, 8.2 overall project.
And now we're coming back a year later asking for $55,000. I don't think that I can sell that to residents.
Scott?
I understand the concerns. I'll vote against the motion. I'd like to see it done. Actually, part of me would like to see us have some sort of an internal evaluation or an offset measuring system. So when we pave an amount of property or we place hard surfacing over top of it, I'd like to see an offset to that. So we've agreed that we're going to lay pavement in Harrison Park, and I'll vote against the motion. I'll support this getting done because it's something that contributes as an offset, because ultimately it's not sustainable just to pave everything. So it's nice to have some offsets to that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to mention that, Wayne, if this comes in under budget, can we put that money towards this? Like when this all ends with the entire project, if we're under by 100,000, can 50 of that go to this or not?
As the project was going to be debenture, you absolutely could allocate more to that debenture, but I would say the greater priority would be reducing the overall debenture.
Okay, gotcha, thanks.
My question's probably, Kristen, you're going to have to answer it. I just read somewhere that one of the major cities in Europe, and it might have been Paris, is insisting it's either got to be a green roof or solar panels on every building, and I can't remember where I read that. But there is going to be climate temperature change with, and you probably aren't going to know the stat of how many square feet.
You want me to go to Paris to look into it? I can, but
No,
yeah.
that's...
No, I don't know, but we can find out. We can find out information like that for you if you wish.
But there is a calculation on the more grass you have, the lower the temperature, because absorbs rain, absorbs heat compared to rooftops.
There's plenty of benefits with that as well, and it's also even adding some type of insulation as well for heat loss in a building as well. So.
And does it, I guess it would it lengthen the lifespan of the roof having something growing on it versus the sun hitting it for the next 20 years?
I can follow up with our contractor on that. I don't have that answer right now.
Okay, good, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
I think I could answer it. Like, we had that conversation. Like, what we're doing is redirecting the water to the drainage as well. So that's almost the answer to this question. You are saving, like the way it is right now, you open the door, you could step in a puddle of water anywhere. So there's water laying on the roof the way it is now.
Yeah.
If we do this, it redirects the water to the drains, correct?
Right. So those roofs and the high roof as well, unfortunately, the roof drains where they were put how many years ago weren't put in the proper spots, and they aren't the lowest point on the roof. So you can walk out there right now and you could be in 3/4 of an inch or 1.5 inches of water. What this system is that Pam had described as well is that there's a granular material that will allow water to wick away and then hopefully towards the drain. Now, we're not rebuilding the roof and creating positive drainage towards that roof, but we're using materials in order to do that.
Right.
These roofs are built to take on, or not to take on water, but to have water on them. But in the long run, it's better if we can get the water off of them, for sure.
Right, so 100% extends the life of it.
So John's motion is to remove this from the budget, calling the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. 1, 2, 3, I'm opposed. 4, so that levels the playing field, meaning that it's defeated, it's not passed. 4-4. So that means that the motion is not carried, correct? No, I voted in that one, because it's a tie. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, well, wait a minute. No. Yeah, correct. Did it have to be called a, hold on, Brian, did it have to be a recorded vote for me to vote on that? Didn't have to be, so I can vote. Okay, good. Okay.
The next project are 2 benches in Percy England Parkette. Percy England served as an alderman from 43 to 72. I just think that's amazing. So there's a plaque that was on a stone. We've put it on the wall in that north parkette, and there would be 2 benches on either side of the plaque. Bayshore table and chair replacement. This was a project we started this year, 2 of 3 years, replacing the tables and chairs. We have seen an increase in rentals of this facility, reflecting council's commitment to new blinds, paint, improve the washrooms and the ceiling tiles. Bayshore roof repair, $65,000 from tax. The Bayshore has a complex roof system. There's 5 sections, so this is a really great example of asset management. We did maintenance in 2016, therefore in 2020 we're doing a restoration instead of a replacement of this roof section at a much lower cost. Bayshore glycol leak testing, I've learned a lot about heating and cooling. Glycol is warm, so the Bayshore coolant, the glycol is warm. There is a leak. You see it popping up through the floor. It's how we make sure that frost doesn't get into the floor. This would look to test it with a future repair. We may hold this pending the infrastructure grant decision, but at some point this may need to be repaired.
So this is the arena floor, just to be clear?
That's right.
Going to Brock first, had his hand up, and then I'll come back.
It's completely possible that this could be a really big issue, couldn't it?
It could be.
Yeah.
We're fingers crossed on that grant.
Go ahead. Travis.
I was going to go to a different topic, but if you want to speak, Shreds. Right.
We're just testing. We're just testing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a test at this point. Where the leak is.
I'm just thinking ahead, like it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. So where the leak is actually on the underfloor heating system, and right now that system is turned off. We're not using it because we take the ice out in the Bayshore for it could be 3 to 5 months of the year. Then that frost does leave the ground. What this heating system does, where the glycol leak is that takes the frost out of the ground that much quicker, easier for facility conversion. So our intent would be to do it with the overall replacement of the arena floor and all the refrigeration infrastructure. Right now, we just need to test to isolate where the leak is and locate where the leak is.
Okay, Trav.
Thank you. I was just going to go back to that Bayshore roof structure, Section 1 restore. I recalled we did the Bayshore roof maybe when we started council, or maybe it was just after, when it was done by a local contractor and he was coming to repair it, and that we're doing it again. There's a different section of the roof?
Yeah, there's 5 different
Okay.
sections, and Kristen's worked with our Garland to do those assessments. So it probably feels like we're always doing a section, either restoring it, repairing it, doing maintenance.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't redoing the same section we'd done previously with the local contractor.
We did do repair work on this section in 2016.
The section that you're thinking of is section 3B, which is on the west side of the building. We did a full replacement on that section last year, I want to say. Yeah,
Thank you.
Bayshore Hall of Fame showcases. So there's a Sports Hall of Fame Committee, they've requested additional cases. The existing space is full. The $19,000 is for the manufacture install of upper and lower cabinets. They really want only the uppers. The bottom will provide storage, and they save a situation where you have these cabinets kind of sticking out in the hallway that really would be an obstruction for anyone with a visual disability. You know, it's an important part of sharing our sports history.
I may just be lacking this knowledge, but Owen Sound Sports Hall of Fame Committee, is that a committee of the city? In the third-party committee?
It is independent and arm's length.
So
But we do, you know, we help them sell tickets, we do some advertising for them.
I'm just thinking when we talked about doing a new poster board for the rec center, it was girls hockey, we were saying we were going to contribute a portion of the funds to help put that in place. Whereas here, there's a separate committee who's coming to us and asking us to do $19,000 for showcases. Just wondering, nothing against the Owen Sound Sports Hall of Fame, but if it's an organization, do they have the ability to do donations or something to help offset some of that expense?
Through your worship, we did ask them if they had any funds to contribute to the project, and they don't. Their contribution is certainly in their in-kind support for, you know, the annual celebration and induction.
I could argue that every minor sports group also contributes lots of valuable hours to all that service as well. Well, I don't know. I don't know how the organization works. I don't know if anyone else has an insight on, Brock, I don't know if you have something that I don't know, but like, I just think when we ask other groups to do it, we just passed this community services. There was a partnership, not just a solo, but I don't know their financials, so I don't want to say we're not doing this unless you give us 10 grand, and they're coming back and saying, well, we have $0, so we're not doing it. But
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, every year when they do the inducting, like they're the ones that were responsible for putting up the, that board where the actual people's names and everything go on it, and that's quite expensive, isn't it?
Well, we did. The city paid for that at the
Oh,
time.
did we?
The
Okay.
wave.
Yeah.
They're going to move away from the wave. They've been using the cabinets, as you see them, to have the inductees. They've gone to photo frames within those cabinets. So their proposal is to move away from the wave, put cabinets on the north wall where you see the tables. And so this will span the whole north wall. So although it is $19,000, I'm not sure how many years, but I would say at least probably 10 years worth of inductions would
North wall,
fit in
west
that
wall.
space.
Just think about direction. So along the edge of the
Yeah,
hall rooms.
yeah, where the tables are in the photo.
I've maybe got some too much emotion invested in a sense, because this was started by my father. We last night talked about hosting the next Arts and Cultural Awards, which the city staff put on, fund, do all that type of stuff. We've got a group that looks after this, arm's length. I think it's every second or third year that they meet, not actually every year that they have new people coming in. But basically, it's looking after part of the heritage of the community without really costing us anything year after year, other than helping them, I suppose, sell some tickets and do some things. But there isn't a lot of cost to us otherwise. So, I mean, if they quit at some point, we would have to put on the event or not ourselves, and there'd be some cost to it. So they are arm's length, like minor hockey, et cetera, but they're doing it all. So it's been a number of years since the last time we would have done an upgrade down there, and it was probably the swirly wall, which we were doing about every third or fifth, probably, swearing-in ceremonies. So like that's sort of like every 10 years, so it isn't a heavy load. So any motions? Seeing none, keep moving.
Bayshore Handrails, this was a pilot project we undertook in 2019. It's been very positive. We'd like to continue the pilot with an additional $10,000 in 2020.
Richard.
I just wonder, could you tell us what it would cost to do the whole thing all at once?
We're thinking around $40,000 to $50,000 to do the remainder of the facility.
And we have included that in the grant that we put in for.
We have, yes.
So if we're successful, that'll be covered. If we're not successful, then we're back at square one.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything that I've heard more about down at the Bay Shore Arena on Saturday nights at hockey in years. Well, years ago, I used to hear about the fact we didn't have anything quite a bit. But this year, everybody I see asks me, when are we going to get them at our end of the arena? So I'd like to make a motion that we add an extra $50,000 to this budget. We go ahead and we do all the work in one shot. If we can recoup it from the grant, we recoup it from the grant. But it's been a long-standing safety hazard in that arena, especially given the age group of the people we tend to see there. And so that's my motion.
If we do it ahead of getting the grant, does that affect our ability to get the grant?
It does. So we'd want to wait and hear about the grant because you can't do any work and then fund it through the grant. So we,
And that's fine with me if we just, then the motion is just to put the money aside so that the work will get done one way or the other, Your Worship.
Okay, so the motion would basically to be, add $50,000 to this to be into a reserve until such time?
Total of $50,000. So
Total of
add
50.
$40,000 to bring this up to $50,000.
Okay, good, thanks. Brian?
If we do what Councillor Thomas suggests, does that mean an RFP?
I'll have to consult with Michelle, given that the design has been sort of unique. So I will consult with Michelle and make sure we stay on side from a purchasing perspective.
I'm a little bit concerned. Like, Ron Kruger's done this, he's put, no?
I'm convinced, and I don't want to get ahead of Michelle, but this would be, we'd be under the several clauses we can to specify the contractor because of the prototype, I'll call it.
Okay, I'll leave it alone then, thanks.
Other discussion, Scott?
I'm just reluctant to increase the budget this time. I like, this has been a great project. I absolutely agree. I just wish, Councillor Thomas, that on the slide before, you would have made a motion then to take that $19,000 away from the Hall of Fame instead of just piling more expenditures on, because I don't think we're just financially in that position right now to do that. So I'm super hopeful we get the grant, but to add money to the budget, I think we need to be wary of our financial
Gonna go to
situation.
Through your worship, through the projects that have already been deferred or removed altogether, we've created room of $73,500 so far, so we could, in theory, add this project without increasing the overall tax budget. $73,500. I can summarize what those are so far. We've got the downtown Wi-Fi at $40,000. Oh, sorry, you're right. That's a $93,500. 40,000, 8.5 to fund water to the fiber project, 25,000 deferred for asset management, 10,000 for the message boards at Harrison Park, and 10,000 from the zoning bylaw. So that brings us up to 93,500 that we've cut so far.
Okay, go ahead.
I did make the motion, Your Worship, knowing that we had achieved significant savings so far. I guess my final comment, and I know the Deputy Mayor is going to speak, would be that this has been a significant liability issue for us for many, many years. And we've got a chance. We finally have something that works for everybody. Let's just get on with it and get it looked after.
Brian?
So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but I'm just wondering if we shouldn't have a friendly amendment and ask that the attack pitch in a little bit.
I would be concerned regarding the friendly amendment, what that means in terms of our agreement with the attack, which of course is, I think we've just renegotiated recently, did we not? So we've got a ways to go on that. It's coming up.
2021, I think.
Again, I'm not averse to that idea, but I'd still like to see the project go ahead one way or the other.
Just, sorry, I went to the washroom. What was the motion?
To add $40,000 from the amount that we've found in savings so far to the handrails and do the whole building instead of $10,000 a year at a time. So getting it over with and...
And we're still available, we're still out to see if we get a grant.
Yeah, we'd still prefer to get the grant for that if we can first. So all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so. 1, 2, 3, 4, and, okay, and opposed is 1, 2, 3, so it does carry.
Next, at the Julie MacArthur, this is adding rubberized flooring to the outdoor seating area that's used by schools and at public skating times.
Rock?
It's installed by our own staff.
Is this a carry forward, or didn't we do this last year? I thought.
We did do, I think, one rink or one half, but this would be to complete the project. It was sort of a 2-year.
Okay. Okay.
Moving, again, at the Julie MacArthur, it kind of makes me sad, but we have been unable, despite our best efforts, to get trees to grow in the tree pods up there. What we're proposing is a partnership with the Family Y. We would close those pods in, add fiberglass planters that would be filled with flowers and plant material rather than the tree that you see in the photograph.
Scott?
This one I had circled because it reverts back to, well, and actually earlier, Councillor Tamming, you made a great example or an excellent evaluation of a priority rating on one. So this is another one that rates as high. The trees are failing, but again, we pave over everything, and I just like to see some more naturalized areas, and this is the loss of more space. Is there not something we can, why do we have some trees succeed downtown where the root system hasn't got water in 75 years, and they sit and salt far more than what these are exposed to? Like, I can't understand how these are experiencing worse conditions than what downtown trees are. Some of them are successful, some of them fail downtown, but
I've been extraordinarily stubborn with my staff about bringing this project forward, and I'm only bringing it when all else has failed. So we took the soil out of those pods, we remediated them because they were high in alkalinity. We replanted them last year, and you see what we've got. We cannot make trees survive up there. We've tried different varieties. It doesn't seem to wash. I'm a big believer in the landscape plan for that property. We just haven't been successful, and I can't suggest to you that you, yet again, plant those 14 pods full of trees. So we're bringing forward a different option that's a cost sharing with the Family Y.
Rock?
Is there not any way we can put up some kind of protective fringe like we've got out front here and plant flowers in the ground instead of putting boxes? Be cheaper, is my thinking.
I don't know how much micro detail you want. That would be a trip hazard, and certain people might latch onto that. I think there's a reason you want elevated stuff whenever there's a change in elevation there.
Okay, so can we keep going?
Back to glycol, there is a glycol leak at the Julie MacArthur. We think we have it isolated to the east pad. This has two components. One, the test to figure out exactly where it is, and the second part, really, the 22,000 of construction is a best guess. It depends on how big and where the leak is exactly. Can it be isolated? That type of thing. Police building, masonry repairs, this is...
Sorry, Pam, can we go back? Apologize.
Yep.
Is that not covered by warranty?
Unfortunately, it's not.
Why not? I'm just curious. Like, I felt the same thing about all these new light towers being replaced in the downtown. The Big Dig was not 50 years ago. I'm just surprised. Anyways, maybe you can just speak to that? Thanks.
Do you want to speak to the warranty on those?
Excuse me. For components of the arena, we're past the warranty period for that, even either through workmanship. Some warranties, depending on the type of equipment, is 1 year. Same with City Hall as well. We do enter into service agreements, which like for this building, for example, once we construct it new, we'll enter into service agreements in order to maintain that equipment. Unfortunately, through the build, though, we didn't get the warranty with the rec center that you're asking about here, so we're past that period now.
This is police building, masonry repairs, important building envelope work. Police station access floor, these are 2x2 tiles that would be replaced in areas including the server room, records management, and dispatch, and there is like IT infrastructure under that floor. Our own staff will do the install.
Just a question, the plan for dispatch. So we're talking about doing work here, but is there a plan for dispatch to relocate within the building? And if so, is this work that needs to be delayed?
I guess I would defer to the members of the police service board.
Go ahead, but
I think the police need to answer that question because it's when they need to move to another part of the police services building, they'll do so. But presently, they don't have to expand because of the number of contracts they have.
so there, yeah, there isn't a plan right now to move out of that. Yeah, okay.
And I think the next one, Kate is going to speak to their access control.
So you'll see later in this budget that we do have the capital budget from Police Services, and they're looking for the same $150,000 to fund their program-specific capital budget that they've looked at from the tax levy in the past. This was one of several projects that they put forward that they felt were more facility-oriented than program-specific. We looked through them, and most of them we disagreed. However, I think this is one that we sort of compromised. This facility access does relate to the building. We have a similar system here at City Hall. It's not necessarily program-specific, but a corporate program, I suppose. So that is why it's showing up under the facility rather than the police board budget.
Over to the animal shelter, probably a building it would be helpful for council to see, but these are overdue and necessary upgrades at that facility. Bottle filling station, an initiative by council over several years. We're making a dent in it. Worth noting, just at City Hall, 7,789, which is 324 cases of water. Pretty amazing in less than a year.
Careful, Tom.
I was just going to say, I noticed on some, on these what we're planning to do for the 2020 locations. Are we planning to do something at Kelso Beach at some point? These ones are just saying that we're going to do it at the cemetery, Public Works, Art Gallery, Tumlins Park, Chris Park, and
If you would like us to put Kelso Beach high on the list for 2020, we can certainly do
I
that.
just mean, are you okay with, is it
Yeah.
okay to be in an outdoor system?
We did them
That-
at soccer
Kiwanis?
complex, so
Which one do you feel is more of a necessity? I guess, I leave that to, I just think that at Kelso Beach, there's people utilizing that beach, the beach or the campground or the park, whatever. And there's one spot on the west side that's really not being, just at Tom Williams Park. Everything else is really cemetery or staff oriented. I was thinking if we were going to use one for a public area, that might be a good location.
okay.
Where would you put it, onto the washrooms, new washrooms at the south end?
Yeah,
By the-
probably be a great location.
And through when the forecast was developed 2 years ago, we have massaged it a little bit depending on needs, and if we're renovating a facility, sometimes we include that in the capital operating budget as well. So I'm sure that we can massage that forecast.
Would that, when like things like summer folk or things like whatever that are utilizing that area, they'd be able to access that without necessarily having to rent another, or bring a water pot out, whatever it's called?
Yep.
Go ahead, Carol.
How far are we along the vision of completing the installation?
I think 2020 is 3 of 5 years that council had sort of given direction.
Okay. So, just as we talked about using monies to augment for budget. Is this an area where it would be more helpful to expedite more water filling stations based on the concerns that have been raised about single-use plastics?
Really up to council. Yeah.
Okay, discussion? Go ahead.
How long is this program running?
We'll run for 5 years, we're at year 3.
Okay.
$10,000
I mean,
a
at this
year.
point, I don't know if speeding it up really,
Gains us 2 years.
it doesn't really gain too much, I don't think, does it?
2 years. So you'd go to 30,000 and do the last 3 years all at once, is the alternative, or one of the alternatives. Scott?
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I saw in one of our documents here, it drops off in 2021 from the $10,000 line item. I support it just being at 10,000 for this year and not increasing it. You know, I use them, but 7789 reused is, some of those people may have went to a tap as well. Like it's somewhat hard to discern exactly how much reduction there is. It's all positive, but I wouldn't support it increasing it. So.
Okay.
Next is the Maglock installation program, again, a multi-year program. Council have supported other places. They save staff time and they ensure consistent time of opening at these facilities. This year, we're planning Westside Boat washrooms and the cemetery washrooms. Billy Bishop Museum, this is a facility owned by the city. It's a National Historic Site. It's a designated property. It's operated by the Billy Bishop Museum Board. We have put money in the budget. This is year 2 of rehab program. Once we got the exterior not leaking, to improve the interior, the bedroom, the hallway, the ceilings that have been damaged by water.
Is 10 enough?
Pardon me?
Is $10,000 enough for that building?
We're plugging away at it.
Can I just ask, we're not really doing any repairs yet? We're just trying to put money away for repairs?
We did repairs this year.
Okay.
We did, this is one of the sheets that's replaced on your desk, but this year it includes the bedroom, the hallway, and the stairwell.
Okay, so is there any grant money out there, or that can Billy Bishop look for grant money to help with this?
They certainly can. Would they be eligible for Trillium? Maybe, so we can certainly
Can
encourage
you
them
suggest
to.
that?
The CN Caboose, this is a carry forward, just one of those projects, unfortunately, we just didn't get done, but the roof will be 16, the exterior 10, and once done, the Community Waterfront Heritage Center has signaled that they'd be willing to assume the asset and the ongoing maintenance of that asset. Courthouse and jail, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but this would be, we're doing the Heritage Impact Study and the Cultural Heritage Evaluation. That will come through Community Services Committee later this year. What we've heard and what Council's heard is that the overall property and buildings are a lot, and they create a inhibition to, they inhibit the redevelopment of the site. So this would be funds to assist council on how to implement the conclusion of this current study.
Brock had his hand up there.
Noticed at the very end of the package in the 5-year forecast in 2021 that there is $300,000 set aside
Yes.
for demolition.
Right.
Yeah. I just wanted to make note of that.
Not of the courthouse, though. I don't think that'll be for the jail and
Jail.
the walls at the back,
Right.
just to be clear.
Yeah.
Courthouse
Oh,
is
sorry, yes.
designated.
Just for the jail.
Don't want that one getting out there. John?
Pam, I'm kind of unclear. Can you, maybe it's late in the day, can you explain to me what this 50 goes for?
It will, so we're going to, through committee, we're having a cultural heritage evaluation and a heritage impact assessment. So where you're removing buildings that are either designated or listed on the register and have heritage significance, there's a process. So then the two buildings are conjoined. They have kind of interdependent structural walls. So this will allow us to hire a professional to remove the designated substances, so the jail will have mold, lead, and asbestos, which even if you're tearing it down, has to be properly disposed of, and then the approach to any demolition that council would approve. So I don't want to presuppose the results of this study and your work with the public, but we're just preparing to do that work.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused then. Why should we spend anything at all on that building until we make a decision what to do with the building? That's what I'm confused by. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And sorry, I guess I should have made clear, we wouldn't do any of this work until we have that process that's running right now finished, and we have council's direction, and then we would go forward. So we are doing the designated substance survey, because it doesn't matter what happens with that building, stay or go, we have to address those things.
Why is that, Pam? Seriously, if somebody wants to buy it for $1,
Yep.
they would absorb the risk of doing that, wouldn't they?
You mean the jail portion?
Anything.
Yeah, I guess if someone wanted to buy it for $1.
Yeah. I move, Mr. Mayor, to strike this item, and I don't mean to throw sand in anybody's machinery, but I hear all the time about this building, the public wants a comprehensive answer to it. I hear the roof's leaking. I hear it's in imminent danger of collapse, and this is from people that have toured it. And I just don't know why we'd spend $50,000 if maybe we don't have to. I'm just raising that.
Going to go to Wayne.
If I could, Your Worship, certainly I will tell you, 2 months ago, I had said to staff we've been trying hard. I said, I think it's time we go forward with recommendation to council that entire building come down, and we then mark it as a vacant lot. I think we'd sell it instantly. We spoke with the architects who were doing the study for us. That was my mindset going into that meeting, but as always, I'm opening to listening, and I do believe, I think that's a valuable building, the courthouse structure, if we could save it. I would say what I heard from the architect, I said I'm prepared to let that report come forward to council, but I think the time has come. The building will not last much longer. You're absolutely right. That building, as it stands today, will not last much longer. And even to limp it forward without doing anything is going to be a lot of money. I believe council needs to listen to that architect's report, understand it fully, and decide once and for all, in spite of what we'd love to see happen, which is we'd love to see an adaptive reuse, as much of that building retained as possible move on. I think the time is very close where this council will have to make a decision. Either you're in, or it's coming down, unfortunately, and we would all regret that. It's coming down, it is over, we're moving on, and I think we all agree, in today's market, you'd sell that property very quick and it would be redeveloped, but that structure wouldn't be there. But you could certainly make it so that as much of the heritage features retained in some kind of a thing as we've done at other facilities. So that's where we're at. I think after you hear the architect's study that is coming when, Pam? We think it's coming.
Hopefully before the end of the year.
I would say at this time, if you wish to do something, leave this as a placeholder, listen to the architect's report, and then move ahead, and this $50,000 may be used for something else if you deem. I didn't hear from the architect, and I mean that being council, what I heard.
Your Worship, I accept the logic of the city manager, and if I could withdraw my motion then. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Scott?
I guess that gives me some clarity on it, because I feel like a couple years ago, we had allocated funds for the study. That study didn't get done that year. It was moved into a carry forward. Is that the study that's now being done? Because this looks to me like a study on a study, and it's just going to tell me something I already know. The jail needs to come down. It's full of mold. We were in it a few years ago. It was almost a biohazard to go in through there without PPE gear probably at the time. It can't be better. So it needs to be both. I just feel like here's $50,000 to tell me something I already know. I'd have the keys to a Caterpillar and knock her down. We know it's going that way. I'd rather spend the $50,000 on a new roof for the courthouse, because we know that needs to be done.
Go ahead, Pam.
I certainly appreciate the sentiment. If it wasn't a designated building and a building that was on our heritage register, it would be a way simpler process. We wouldn't have spent $50,000 with a heritage expert, architect, and structural engineer to do the study that we're 90% of the way through and will be coming forward to committee. We wouldn't have to do any of that. The decisions would be way simpler. We're holding ourselves to the same standard that we hold developers, other owners of heritage property like St. Mary's Church. There's provincial policy, the Ontario Heritage Act, that we're obliged to live by and follow. So I would just leave it at that.
Go ahead, Marion.
Just a few comments. In my view, excuse me, this is a baby step to making the property more attractive to sell.
We hope so.
Yeah, and hopefully others can see it in that light. I just wanted to back up to the Billy Bishop renovations again. I don't need the slide or anything. I just want to mention that Community Foundation Grey Bruce does have capital granting up to $15,000, and Billy Bishop would certainly be eligible to apply for that. So
Super,
they should
we'll
be
pass that
encouraged.
along.
Yeah.
Tom Thompson roof,
Carol still wants to.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I just need clarification. So this study, actually, the money for this study was carried forward?
No.
Okay, this
There's a
is-
study happening right now by Taylor Hazel Architect, Tacoma Engineering, that will be coming forward, happening.
Gotcha.
This
Thank
would
you.
be next.
Thank you.
Tom Thompson roof, sections 1 and 2. These roofs will be replaced. Pretty important roof. All right. Tom Thompson washroom, this work will be done by our own staff. They'll same type of accessible upgrades as the other washrooms receive.
Just a quick note, we're moving towards fixtures in our buildings that are very common. I find the ones here in City Hall with the sink is like, I don't know, 1.5 inches in depth. Like the sink's job is to capture water and drain it, and the water, I can hardly get my hands under there, and I don't have big paws. Like, so like,
Those aren't the sinks we're standardizing, so the ones you saw in parks and the toilets you see in parks, we're standardizing those, so we have the same parks, same faucets, they're not the same
okay,
ones as
I just want to make sure we're not, I see that as a mistake, so I just want to make sure we're not doing the same thing.
A little Trumpy.
Hi folks, it's Dennis, Director of Public Works and Engineering. First thing here is the door replacement for Mechanics Bay. Last year we had $6,500 for that project. We went out for quotes, it came in closer to 20, so we're seeking another $13,500 in order to complete the job. It deals with the masonry work around the frame, the steel frames. Essentially, the quotes are higher than what we expected.
Dennis, you can do it with a sledgehammer.
We can, but we still have to make sure there's structural integrity before we install the roll-up door.
Rules, Scott.
I just need to explain to me why the forklift must fit through it when it, for so many years, hasn't been an issue, or is it a new forklift? What's the rationale behind there's not enough to this?
The issue is that we have 2 mechanics as opposed to 4. So we're trying to do is make this building more efficient so that we can, there's more demand on the amount of equipment that we have. We're trying to make these guys get as much done as possibly they can during the day. So what happens now, they have to shuffle back and forth, trying to get vehicles out of the bay, move equipment, and work around the obstruction. Oh, sorry. Keyboard, thank you. The next is replacement of the salt and sand storage structure. Both structures that are currently there have reached the end of the useful life. Where you want to, well, we're proposing to build one structure to contain everything. The work that will take place in 2020 will be site work, a bit of engineering, and prepping the site for the future development of one structure. And again, in this case, we're looking at anywhere between $500,000 and $600,000 for the structure, which will take place the following year. We should have a better idea sometime in 2019 or 2020 what that actual cost will be.
Clarification, it's rated medium. Can you tell me, other than leakage, and is that leakage established? You say it may be leaking or it is leachate. Is it happening or not?
It does occur because the roofs are leaking. The whole idea is we want to be containing your material in a dry area. It's all the salt that we use for our roadways, again, in the sand. If it does become wet, it starts to freeze. It becomes problematic when trying to place into the equipment. And again, your salt starts to dissolve if it's exposed to the elements.
And what else, what other issues relate to the end of their service life? You say it's at the end of their service life. Is there anything else you can point to, or is that the main thing?
Well, that's the main thing. I mean, the structures are, the roofs are starting to, you can see the structural integrity of the roofs, and the framing is getting to the point where it needs either major work. They're not really suited for our needs. They're not big enough, and they're coming to the end of useful life.
It's a medium rate, and again, in view of the comments I made earlier about the 10th Street Bridge, other priorities and stuff, I'd move we strike this and bring it up again next year.
Going to call the question. Don't see anyone else's hands going up. Call the question. All in favor? 1, 2. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's defeated. It remains in the budget.
Last year, we replaced our fuel system and our fuel tanks out at the Public Works yard. There is some paving that needs to be done. That is essentially all gravel now, so this is what we're putting forward, is the paving around the new fuel system.
I want to thank Mr. Kafalis. At our very first meeting, he picked us up $180,000. He had this item in at 200. It wasn't flying, in fact, Your Worship.
That is correct.
When you add a zero, sometimes it's the placement of that zero. Dennis, I remember back when E.C. Kings and some of these people would pave a road, and they'd end up an extra cement, extra asphalt at the end of the day, and they just found a place to put it.
It usually ends up in my driveway, but just kidding. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like right now, I mean, we pay for everything that we do. That might have been something that happened back in the day, and we're probably thankful that it did happen, but right now, we're expected to pay for everything
It doesn't pull off the back of the truck the same way, but I'm sure we can probably
Your Worship,
get...
I think our purchasing agent would strongly suggest that the city doesn't take from any of those vendors in that regard.
No, I'm not thinking about a gift from one of our suppliers. I'm just thinking about that I guess we don't do our own paving, though.
No,
I was
we
just
do,
thinking if
yeah.
you had leftover stuff in the back of the truck for what we've already paid to do a road, then we'd just drop it down there.
Yes, and that would happen if it was, say, an existing city project. That they may have said that by the ton, and they had some left over in the truck, and then it was paid for already by the city. We'd say, well, bring it to the yard.
Yeah.
But right now, we pay. It's always specific what we pay exactly for. So either by the square meter or by the ton, so everything's accounted for. There's no.
It's more tightly controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
This is the next item is the quality management system, similar to what we did for wastewater and water. What we're finding with our existing, what we're finding now more and more, the quality management system will create a document that assembles all the work plans, the various tasks associated with the winter control, stormwater, facility management, road maintenance. Again, we have more legislation coming in on West Wallow, including the minimum maintenance standards and the CVOR, which is the commercial vehicle operating, permitting, and licensing. Even though it's not legislated to have such a document, we're going to find out that there is a lot of legislation that would be contained in this document. And again, we want to be able, this document will help bring all our standard operating procedures together in one place. It'll also help create metrics that we can track and report to council on a regular basis. Right now, if council asks us for something, we take the time, try and gather all the information and present a report. And by having a document like this in place, we'll be able to gather all this information. Just in my past experience, when I first became a director of public works and engineering for the city of Yellowknife, first thing council asked me is, hey, are we doing a good job? Are we doing enough? And I said, I can say, yes, we are, but I couldn't prove it. So we did hire a consultant from Ontario, Kavenka Limited. It came up and did a whole system performance analysis on our crews. That was for about $70,000. And they said we needed a management operating system to be implemented, which was $170,000. So this document for $35,000, I believe, will accomplish what I ended up spending $240,000 in the past. Now we're on to the energy management program. I'll be back. Unlike Arnold, who said he won't be back, I'll be back.
Man, oh man, he's a lot faster than Pam, isn't he? What's with that?
I won't be here much longer. Energy Management Program, as Kristen says, there's a cost to doing nothing. 2017 was the first year of our Energy Management Program. Not only is there a reduction in energy use, which when you see the operating budget for the Bayshore Community Centre, I think you'll be really pleased, but there's an extension of life expectancy, environmental impact, increased reliability, all sorts of good things. So this would continue on that program. Library HVAC reserve, this work we did, the library has 5 HVAC units. In 2018, a decision was made to replace all 5 when we were doing the roof so that we wouldn't be back up there doing new penetrations. So this is contributing to a reserve to pay back essentially those costs. Library roof overhangs, there's 3 overhangs, 1 over the Adult Learning Center. They're leaking, they're built-up roofs, they need to be replaced. I think that's it.
There we go. Adding notes in my environmental list. There's another one, 50,000 this year.
All right, Dennis, water, wastewater, you're up.
What's the water? Oh, yeah.
Folks, I'm back again. We'll deal with our water and wastewater, as you can see by the table in front of you. Give us an idea of what we want to do, I guess, in the following year. A lot of the projects are high and somewhat are moderate, but they are work that we need to do. The big one in terms of water replacement or water infrastructure replacement is the water mains along 9th Avenue East from Warlow's Farm, just south of Warlow's Farm to 8th Street East. This pipe was first installed in 1950. It's a combination of 8-inch and 6-inch pipe. Needs to be replaced. Over the last 5 years, we had several breaks, and it really impacts Summit Place and Lee Manor, and even this year. So we're talking senior citizen residents that are without water when we do have breaks that we experience in these sections of pipe. The plan is to do the engineering in 2020, and the following year actually do the construction.
Go ahead, Brock.
I'm just, like, the first portion here, it says 1.6 million total, and then the bottom portion, it only comes out to about 200 grand. I'm just wondering which one's which.
That is just for what's going to occur next year.
Okay, gotcha. Yep.
Next is water modeling and training. Again, one of the most important things that we can do internally is maintain our water model. This allows us to determine what impacts future development will have on our community, and especially when we come back with design, especially when we have a lot of this infill. So what we want to do is be able to bring that model up to date, and again, also provide some training to staff to ensure that we can maintain the model in-house as opposed to looking at external resources to do it, and in the long run end up saving us money. Cathodic protection, this is something council's seen quite a bit in the past. We want to continue with the program. We expect it'll be in place for another 9 years. cross-connection control program. This is something that council was introduced last year. Again, we talked about we have about $2 million worth of work that needs to be done in order to protect our system, especially with the industrial sector in terms of those facilities. Originally, we came forward with about $400,000 request on an annual basis, but we've taken that down to something more palatable, which is $200,000. I want to continue with the program. Industrial valve, check valve, this was brought forward last year. The original amount was $200,000. We've ordered we've issued a purchase order for the chamber itself. That was about $146,000. We prepped the site for a tune of somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000. We are requesting additional funding of approximately $70,000 for the installation, which we hope to do as soon as we finish the piping and valve replacement at the water treatment plant. Here's fiber, the fiber project that we talked about earlier. Again, this is something that we want to link all our facilities to, and I'm sure we have our SCADA system, we can control everything. It's, given that we only have 3 individuals that operate the water treatment plant, having something this in place is paramount, and especially when we have a facility that if we lose communication to a facility, then we actually have to man that facility, so essentially taking a man out of the equation. One thing I want to say is give Sean a bit of a pat on the back, because he tries to find out what work's going on in town so he can piggyback on the stuff like the Rogers. It ends up reducing our overall cost. I mean, he's hustling all the time trying to look for ways to help reduce the cost to try and link the fiber to our facilities. So it's just something that you've seen this before, it was already approved. It's just that we have to wait until we finish the work on the detour, so in order to do it, if not, it'll be chaos.
So this is to do work in 2020, is that correct?
That's what we're anticipating, maybe
Okay,
towards
so
the
what's
end.
different in the 10th Street Bridge and detour in 2020?
Well, we're hoping to do is probably hold off right to the end.
Hold it off till the end?
Yeah,
But the
like
bridge
to-
isn't supposed to be done till the end,
Yeah, like in December, and start doing the work then.
really?
Yep. This is directional boring, so the ground won't be frozen in December. It'll be, maybe a few inches, but this is work with a bore underneath and continue, but they do have to
So it's not
create-
that disruptive to the traffic?
It will when you start putting your initial hole in. Like you have to create a hole where you bring in
Yeah.
your directional bore, so that takes up a space, so it'll take up like a lane and create obstruction in the traffic.
But it will not happen until the bridge is open.
That is correct.
I'm holding you to that.
Oh, no, guaranteed, trust me. We tried to put that street lights in on Second Avenue this past week, and we stopped and said we'll do it after the Christmas season. So this is the same thing, we won't look at doing anything, because the detour is working really well, we won't do anything to obstruct the detour. Oh, yeah, this is a great, this is a good project here. This is we have to put in, we had our annual inspection from Ministry of Environment. One of the things that should have been installed was a kind of a chamber chlorine analyzer to determine how much chlorine is in the water as it makes its way into Leith. This is something that should have been done at the offset of our agreement with Leith. It is, I wouldn't say it's a blemish, it's something outstanding that's a part of our annual reports. This is something we have to install in order to remove it. The next question will be is, did we seek contribution from Meaford? Yes, I was told we have. They don't want to contribute anything to it at this time, but we have to move forward to it and figure out if we're going to be able to gain any funding from them.
Answer my question.
Anyways, Matt is battling with them. I mean, I'm not saying the battle's over because I'm not sure what we can do, but we haven't let it go. The next one is hydrant painting. This is something that we usually do on a more regular basis. It's been usually every 5 years. It's been 7 years. We've come up with those new devices that you've seen. I think it was included in the paper, a nice article in the paper. They're actually reflective rings that you can see for miles as you're driving down the road. The different colors reflect the available water flow in each of them. So the whole idea is paint all the hydrants and start continuing to use these rings to make it easier for our firefighters to determine what type of pressure is available to them and flow.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
The reflective things on the hydrants, they're manually determined, they don't automatically change?
No, like once we
So
test.
some are red, some are blue,
Orange,
orange.
some are
Green?
red, yeah, green and blue.
Okay, so they just
Yeah, so
determine
after we test the
what that
hydrant, we
capacity
determine
is.
what the capacity is of the hydrant, what it be
Yeah.
able to provide in terms of fire flow, and then they put the appropriate ring on it.
Okay, so can we not phase in the painting? It seems like so much money to paint these.
We can, we can't say we can do half this year, half the following year, yes. This comes out of water rates, so.
Can you detail why it comes to $90,000? It does sound like a lot of money, and I'd like a little more specifics around the costing. Our staff would be doing the painting themselves?
This is Matt Prentice.
Hi.
Hi, Matt.
We have 646 hydrants. So the unit cost per hydrant isn't actually that high. So it includes preparation and painting, and it is a contracted cost.
Scott? A week ago, when we were at StevCon, there's a fellow there that works alongside those in the nuclear industry, and he was discussing his rust inhibitor products. Have we looked at any sort of rust inhibitor products for this kind of thing? Because he had different products within their product line that kind of are directed at this type of project.
We can explore that. I mean, usually it's a Tremclad or something else, epoxy paint that actually holds up pretty well in these circumstances. But we can look at other products that might be better. But again, there will be a premium with the type of product you use, so we can look at that.
Yeah, it notes rust is the big issue, and it was kind of ironic just discussing his products with this fellow last week and what they're involved with. I wonder too, like, the rings could get damaged and broken, and painting the hydrant all yellow and not separating the cap still, I guess it's a what if. What if somebody takes a boot to a ring, and we can always replace it, but
The unit cost for the rings is pretty small. We actually do have some in reserve. Now we bought a few extra anyway. We don't tend to see that. It wasn't on that sort of thing anyway. We may.
Now, is there a color that would be less attractive to dogs than yellow by chance?
Next is our trunk main valve chamber maintenance. This is an ongoing project. Really deals with our large diameter water mains and also our control valves, and this is something that we want to do or have to do on a regular basis. Again, it's a $50,000 increment. We do it with our own forces. And again, it's just part of maintaining our water system and ensuring that the valves work when they need to work. Valve replacement water treatment plant. You've seen this before. This is a carryover. We do have a contract that was issued, I think, in August. So this also includes the piping, the valves, and the traveling screen. It's just by the time the contract was awarded, we do have someone in place. Again, we held off a little bit because we didn't want them messing around with the water treatment plant when we were doing the water main horseshoe project. And the same thing, when this work is all completed, that's when we'll put the industrial valve chamber in. This is the pipe replacement program you saw last year. Is the same thing. It's all tied into one contract. Filterized optimization and scouring. This is a big project. Currently, our big thing is when we have those major rain events. You have seen this before. You saw it last year. It's very important. It'll help us achieve our full capacity of water treatment plant once in place. Last year we had $25,000 for preliminary engineering. This year we're asking $60,000 for the detailed engineering. We'll issue one RFP first to do the preliminary engineering, and that'll help us determine whether or not we have to replace our filter under drains, whether they need or not to be replaced. And then once we determine that, we can proceed with the detailed design, and then first phase of the project, and hopefully the only phase of the project will take place the following or subsequent year in 2021. SCADA computer upgrades. Again, there is a carryover here of, I think it's $25,000 $45,000, an additional $25,000 for this year. This will replace aging computers at the water treatment plant, as well as upgrading the required software required by the water treatment plant and the network upgrades. So the total budget includes $45,000 carried over from last year, or this year, and then $25,000 for next year. Old Spring System decommissioning. This is actually a very interesting project. Georgian Bluffs is actually replacing water main. Yes, they're actually doing the Inglis Falls Road reconstruction, so they're including replacing the water main underneath that roadway. In order for them to do that, we do have to do a bit of decommissioning work at the Old Spring System. So it's a win-win for the city of Owen Sound, because we don't have to replace that water main. I forget what the cost was, maybe $180,000 worth of water main. Yeah, so it's a good project.
Can I ask a question? The very first council meeting some of us ever sat in, we had a session enclosed about that water system.
Busted.
And the importance of it being maintained to the city during the sale of the property. With Georgian Bluffs work being done now, is that something that council can review? Like, do we have ownership of property that is now redundant?
PUC property?
It's certainly something can be reviewed in 2020 moving ahead. Sure it could. Whether you need the spring system to save that property, we could report back to the committee on that.
No. Replace traveling screen, water screen I mentioned earlier. It's all one big project. That'll be done this year as well. That was originally introduced last year, or for this year. Pump control replacements, VFDs, soft starts. Again, we have about $100,000 to VFDs. The variable frequency drives help us really control our pumps. What we don't mention in our write-up is that because they are in place, we're not including the money that we save, but without them, without your VFDs, you're essentially having a pump either on or off, so it's at full capacity or not. By having these things in place, you are reducing the amount of electricity you need to provide, distribute water through our distribution system. Next big project is our building maintenance, our motor control centers. That's where our variable frequency drives are contained, our soft starts, our PLCs, our programmable logic controllers, and other equipment are located. In order for them to operate properly, they have to have some sort of climate control, and this is provide that climate control to ensure that the equipment is kept cool enough to work as anticipated. As it heats up, they will break down and become less efficient. Clarifier 1 and 2 drivetrain assemblies. This is a carryover from last year, or from this year. We want to carry it over to next year. We weren't able to get the work done. This is something council's seen before. Next one is a storage tank biosolids cleanout. This has to be done periodically. It does cost $150,000, and I think we do it every 5 years, Matt. It's something that must be done as part of normal maintenance, but it is a big ticket item. That's why it's included as a capital project.
Brock?
I was just curious, when you're actually cleaning it out, where does the biosolids go?
The same locations that are licensed for the land application of the biosolids we actually treat. So it just goes to the same place. What we end up finding is at the bottom of the tanks an awful lot of silt and sand built up. Some of that may actually be dealt with as a solid waste because it is almost pure sand, some of it.
Matt, while you're on your feet, can we go back to 19N22, which is the computer and software upgrade? What happens if we don't do this? It's rated moderate, and I wonder if you could just use this as an opportunity to speak generally about aging things, like, can you just speak to that? What would happen if we let it go for a few more years?
Okay, so the software issues right now, software ages 2, Sean can tell you about this, but some of our SCADA software infrastructure is actually aging enough now that there's compatibility issues with operating systems and things like that. As the software ages, you get more and more of that sort of thing happening. You can actually have crashes where you lose your SCADA system purely because a computer decides to do a Windows update and you've got 4 or 5-year-old SCADA software. It happens that fast. This is a mixed bag, though, this particular budget, because it does include hardware and software as well. It also includes climate control for a server room. So software, hardware, climate control are the 3 components in this budget.
So nice to have or has to happen?
This is actually moderate. It isn't actually really moderate. It probably should be a little higher than moderate.
This is half to half. Without a SCADA system, you can't operate. You can operate a water treatment plant, but not to the efficiencies that we need. So you have guys running around the plant, looking at all the valves. Everything's laid out in front of them, a very nice systematic system. You can see there, touch screens. You're able to control the whole system. And if we can, the whole idea is to be able to link all our facilities with the SCADA system so we can control everything and know what's going on in exactly.
Your Worship, certainly and this was with the water treatment plant, but the night we had the large industrial main break right outside the plant, if you were there that night and you watched Matt and Mike and the staff without the SCADA system,
Troy.
I have no idea, well, Troy was there as well, I have no idea what they'd have done, but we'd have been it paid for itself in that one night, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So.
And when Sean talks about putting out the sensors all across, like, at the bus terminal that you mentioned today, again, that helps us identify what are the flows, the pressures, that sort of thing in various parts of town. It really gives us an idea what's going on, helps us identify leaks right away before they become really problematic. So,
Carol had a question.
I just require clarification on communication. When projects are approved the year before, but nothing goes forward. I remember my first year sitting here, Councillor Dodd practically elevated off the chair because you were so concerned about the carry forwards. And so if a project's been approved and no action has been taken, does that come up through a committee, or how does that get communicated prior to this meeting so that at least we're aware that what we approved hasn't gone forward?
we haven't done a report in the past, but it's usually been a process where it comes up as part of the budget process. And a lot of the stuff that we're carrying forward, I mean, we were quite ambitious last year, thinking that we can get all this done. And that's what usually happens. You know, if everything goes tickety-boo, we can get it all done. But if we have one contractor that's a little bit late, or a consultant doesn't get us the drawings back in time, and then we try and schedule, you know, back in time so we can schedule when we need to, then we run into these problems where we have to start carrying forward projects. But if you see the amount of work we did do, we did quite a bit of work. I mean, this is this is always a percentage, and I mean, like, in the things you'll find, these are projects that need to be done, though. If there was projects that didn't need to be done, we definitely bring that up. And maybe we can look at, I can talk to the city manager, and maybe we can start bringing reports forward as part of the operations committee, sometimes like in the third quarter, and give the status of these projects, and let our operations committee know where it is, and then council can find out through the minutes that where we are.
I think certainly for those that are prioritized as high or very high, I would think that would be at least information.
Yep, and that's something that we can do, and there's something we'll strive to do for the upcoming year.
I think Carol just wove Travis's web, and you, Mr. Sondland, just stood there and walked right into his trap. Hey, someone else down there have their finger up? No? Good. Keep going.
Maintenance, drivetrains. Next project is the air header reconstruction at the wastewater treatment plant. This was supposed to be included as part of the original construction of the wastewater treatment plant. It was removed in order to reduce the overall cost. To have a contractor do it would be $160,000. We're going to buy the material and do it ourselves, saving the taxpayers $120,000.
Go ahead.
Just a question, if we originally cut it, obviously at one point we cut it because we didn't feel we needed it, is that why it was originally cut from?
Matt can elaborate, but you needed it, but it could be put off.
It's during the planning for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, the overall needs for the facility were assessed, including the secondary upgrade, but also an awful lot of rehab work on roofs, this sort of piping, structural, and at the end of the day we came in with a $55 million project and had to get it to 45. So we cut, and.
Didn't cut
nurse-
corners.
Yeah, we cut things that basically we knew we could nursemaid for a few more years. And that's why you see projects come forward like the clarifier chain of flights, this, roofs, HVAC, all things that we knew we could get a few more years out of, but not an infinite amount of time. So that's why you see this sort of thing.
The next project is one of those roofs that Matt just talked about, so we're doing one this year for 2020, and then one the following year, but the first one will be worth about $10,000.
So that's one of those living roofs right there.
And we have lots of nutrients that we can provide in this living roof. Stormwater separation program, we spoke about it earlier. Sorry, I didn't respond as quickly as I should have. I was actually looking at something else to see what one of our other programs impacted. But again, it's the stormwater separation program that we've been doing and will continue to do. I'm not sure we have a time frame as how many more years do you think we might be doing this, Chris?
I would say probably 3 to 5.
3 to 5 years, so you'll continue to see this for the next few years. PLC communication upgrades, again, this is all about communicating with our facilities, and this will be the West Side Pumping Station. This year we plan to spend about $10,000 just on the communication portion, and $75,000 in the subsequent year for actual replacement of the PLCs. This is an ongoing project. Again, we have some, we have some concerns that the West Side Pumping Station is actually settling, given its close proximity to the river. So we have some monitoring occurring this year. We propose to spend another $5,000 next year to continue the monitoring. Best case scenario, we just have to do some upgrades to the building. Worst case scenario, we might have to replace that building at a real substantial cost, but this monitoring will help us determine what our future steps are. This is another excellent project. This is the collection system capital investment, and what this is relining of our sanitary sewers. This year, we are spending some money this year. We do have $175,000 this year. That's to actually rebuild some manholes. That's happening right now. So we're not sure how much we're going to end up spending, but it certainly won't be that amount. We want to carry the whatever's left over and request another $300,000 next year to reline sanitary sewers that really need it. This project actually reduces the overall cost of replacing sanitary sewers in terms of actually digging up roads and replacing them. So it's a great project. We do have to provide a certain amount. It can't be a small amount, or it's not worthwhile for the contractor to come up and do it. And next year, if you folks want, we can actually go on site when they're here, and you can actually see it in action. We can organize a little field trip, and you can see it. It's pretty cool.
Can I just ask why there's such a small amount from development charges going to this?
Usually because we're concentrating on the west end of the city, so there's no.
Not related to new growth then?
That's right.
Only this amount would be apportioned to new growth?
That's right. It's only a small portion.
Too bad.
Yeah. The sewer line rapid assessment tool. It's one of my favorite projects. We brought it forward last year. Given that we don't have enough resources to clean all our sewers or flush all our sewers, we were looking for a tool to help us identify what really needs to be cleaned so we can use our resources in an efficient and effective manner.
So,
I will. I guess the big thing is, this is the second time you brought it up, so obviously you feel that it's somewhat important for your operations. So is it going to, yes, you said it will help define which sewers it will help to drain. And I guess our biggest thing that we had this discussion last year, and I guess we could carry it on forward, was purchasing new assets opposed to replacing and maintaining what our current footprint is. So if we do this, what's the benefits to it? What's the justification of it? What's the life cycle of it? Yeah, what's the actual operational savings, I guess, from it?
Well, if I can just make a comparison, in Yellowknife, we were able to flush all our sewers every year. Giving the demand on our resources here, especially with when we talk about all the things that is required of Public Works, there's no way we can do that. So we have to be very strategic in what we flush. So what we have to do is make sure we flush the stuff that has to be flushed, that can result in litigation brought back against the city because the sewer's backed up and it ends up backing up into your system or into your houses. And if we can show that we are doing something to identify what needs to be done and that we're doing it, then it helps mitigate any potential liability against us. And I think a unit like this probably lasts 7 to 10 years.
Yes.
So, I mean, the thing is by what we're trying to do is being able to identify what needs to be done and making sure we're using our workforces the most effective and as efficiently as possible.
Follow-up question. I know previous year we asked this as well to Director of Corporate Services. I think worded it before was any new project, how much does it actually affect the overall rate on wastewater? Obviously, water has a lot more revenue sources and we have a lot more healthy reserves for it, so it can take some of these capital projects. Wastewater is usually struggling to take a breath of air. So when we approve all these wastewater capital projects, what is the ultimate end result to the wastewater charge?
My understanding is, for the most part, these projects were anticipated in our previous wastewater rate study. What impacted our need to increase the rates was not driven by the expenditures, but more the lack of revenues coming in. Our update to the rate study is going to be done in 2020. I think we talked as staff, it would make sense for us to do a focused budget meeting sometime in early 2020 that focuses just on water and wastewater and looks at those 5-year plans. But I can't tell you right now that eliminating this project would have any impact on our wastewater rates as they're going to move forward.
So my follow-up question would be, if you approve all of them, we just say yes to Dennis on every single question capital he's presenting on water and wastewater, does that have an ultimate effect on it? I just remember last year we started getting into a debate on what was water, what was wastewater, and we started removing things from wastewater that we felt weren't essential because there was worry that those capital projects were going to have a negative impact on our wastewater rates. So for me, do we need to be mindful that we don't come into February and we're doing a new water or wastewater thing? We're saying, holy Jesus, we've got 12% rate and we're going to push it all not on water. We're going to shift it all on to wastewater. And then we all scratch our heads and say, ooh, what do we do there? And then we have to fight that battle almost reactively opposed to proactively.
I'd say in these budgets, save and except for those major capital projects like the Bayshore SBS project, or anytime we do a wastewater project that, like, I'm trying to think of a good example, along 3rd Avenue East, I believe, that was heavy on the wastewater side, well over $1 million. Those are the types of projects that are going to have an impact on the wastewater rates. And anything that has to do with the size and condition of our overall wastewater system has an impact on our wastewater rates. A project like this, $40,000, whether we do this or not, they all add up, of course, but in this case, our wastewater capital program is fitting into what we anticipated given the revenues that we have right now. It's the projects that we're not funding through this. So right now we have a debenture anticipated, $2 million. Also, it's the ongoing operating costs of wastewater that's really what's driving our rates, in my opinion.
I think this should stay in. This is one of those things I think about unflushable wipes. There's certain environmental things people are doing that they shouldn't be putting into the system. I don't know what they are. I've never bought them. But yeah,
flushed
they're
wipes.
marketed as flushable or biodegradable or something, and they cause obstruction to the municipal systems. And I think this is probably something that's correlated with the sign of the times until people are a little more mindful.
Brock, if you choose to follow that up, go ahead.
I don't think I can follow that.
Follow it up. I know flushable wipes, they say they're flushable, but they are not. And it's a great concern now in people who are environmentally conscious. So it's something that needs to be at the top of our list.
You can tell us after
East
3.
Bay Shore Road, the sewer pumping station upgrade. I've seen this before. It's almost $2 million. We are going to look at the green fund to be able to help cover the cost. We were looking at potential projects. This is the biggest one that we have related to stormwater and or sanitary sewer. So, and typically with those funding, you can't assemble a whole bunch of small ones to make a big one. We just have to be careful. You know, Chris brought it up earlier this week, just saying, you know, we can't enter into any contracts until we know whether or not we're successful. If we do use this as if we do use this project as the one we use in our application, again, we'll be coming forward probably the second meeting in December with a staff report seeking council's approval to submit the application based on a project. And right now, this is the leading project that we're considering.
And this is lining up with what the county's doing with the road for timing?
That is correct. Thank you, Your Worship. That is correct. Chris sat down or invited the county to meet with us so we can go over their plan. And this is all linked in with what they're proposing to do with East Bay Shore Road. So we want to get this done. The following year, we'll be doing the force main as part of the road reconstruction. And again, we do have a portion, you'll see a project coming up later on dealing with the with some of the engineering for the road portion that we'll be responsible for.
Did I see Richard's hand up there?
Well, you did. It didn't say anything in here about aligning with the county plan, because I certainly had a question about this kind of an expenditure when I haven't seen a heck of a lot of activity down on that part of the world in terms of supporting the Northridge subdivision plan. So I really question whether this is the time to be looking at this kind of project.
Well, thank you for the question. Through your worship, we do have 2 existing lift stations or sewage pumping stations, and staff are keeping together with baling wire and bubble gum. So the whole idea is to replace the 2 and combine the 1. So it has to be done just for that. But we are anticipating future growth, and that's why it'll be sized to accommodate the future growth of the area. But those lift stations have to be replaced.
So, yep, go ahead.
I just begin to worry about the debenture, because once we get the 10th Street Bridge debentured, any debenture after that starts to eat into our operating budget. Is that correct?
Through you, no, this would be funded through wastewater rates, the debenture for this one.
Okay, thank you.
Next project is annual audit for our wastewater operational QMS standards. We run about $4,000 a year. We have to bring in someone external to do it. Sanitary sewer modeling. Again, this is a carry forward project that was approved last year. Again, just with all the work that we've requested our staff to do this year, they are working with the consultant. The project's taking place. It's not going as fast as we thought, so it'll be completed in 2020.
So is this like mapping?
Pardon?
Is this like mapping of the...
It's kind of like mapping, but it also tells you like what the flows are, what the capacity of the pipes are, how much capacity is remaining. If you want to, if you want to do an infill, what impact it will have on our existing system, that sort of thing. What are we able to accommodate for future development within those infill areas? And then we can link in on maybe any big developments that are occurring on the east side of the city and connect that to the system to let us know what's going on.
Okay.
Improved sewage bypass monitoring. One of our favorite topics. We did meet with the ministry earlier this, I think it was in October actually, and they're looking at what the requirements will be to actually communicate bypasses. So this money will help us, to introduce instrumentation to give us real-time data to help us determine when we are bypassing, and allow us to determine how we can communicate better with the with our general public. Depending on what the ministry possibly stipulates, there might be future costs in the future, but right now we're expecting to pay spend $25,000 on this and to give us the information that we need, and then develop a communication plan that we can post on our website. Well, I think that's it for this section. Okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you. There we go. Engineering, your favorite subject. You know what they say. There's God, and then there's engineers. And if it wasn't for us engineers, you'd still be in caves eating rocks. Anyways, asphalt resurfacing program, we're looking to really reduce what we're doing this year for several reasons. One of the big reasons is because of all the work that we're putting into the bridge and how much the bridge is, it's costing us more than we originally anticipated. So we're reducing the scope of our resurfacing program. That plus our staff's going 100 miles an hour dealing with the major projects that we are doing and we plan to do. There is a accompanying spreadsheet. We've included, these aren't high volume areas in terms of traffic. There are 6 roads that have a condition index, a pavement performance condition index of 0. So we've what we've done is prioritize the ones that we in the 6, prioritize them as what we believe what should be done. So the idea is to spend $100,000 next year and work from the top of the list and make our way down to see how much we can get done. Mary?
What does it cost to do a kilometer of road?
It depends. If it's just asphalt, we could look at anywhere from $250,000 if it's just straight asphalt and the road's about 8.5 meters wide.
I'm talking to kind of chew up what's there. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But it can go as high as $1 million, depending on if we have curb and gutter and that sort of thing beside it. So
if it takes a kilometer, $250 for a kilometer, what's this going to do?
the $100,000, it'll address these small areas that need to be done where we've got where it's nothing but cobble. So we haven't addressed them in the past. They're say not the 10th streets or the 8th streets or the 9th streets. They're more residential streets that need to be done at some time. We are trying to chip away at what needs to be done.
So is it possible to get the list of kind of the next lump of priorities?
Like these are the ones
Like
that
from number 7 down?
these are the 6 that we have the condition index is a 0, and that's what we included on for this upcoming year. And this way we don't want to get onto roadways that are like another big project is doing 16th Street. So we have 16th Street that'll be done as part of that funding program that we were successful in obtaining, plus 10th Street and the detour routes. So we want to start saying maybe this is a good year where we can take a bit of money and address the ones that are out of the way that won't impact the major thoroughfares that that service our traffic.
Okay, so, but is it possible for us to get a list of like from number 7 to 10?
Yeah, they would.
Or the next level, whatever.
We
You said
could.
level 0, then it goes to level 1?
Well, these are 0. Like it's all based on the condition index of
So
the
what's
road.
the next level number of condition index? Is number 1?
Yes, we'll get you our priority list,
Okay, so
7 through 30.
Right.
We will,
so
yes.
My other question is to members of council. I don't know how much we have removed out of here so far, but it would be my interest to put that money we've taken out and put it into this program.
Always council's prerogative. I will say over the years, we have at times put over $500,000 into our resurfacing program. Other times we put less. This is the least we put into it. It's a combination, and I want to start by saying every director here would like another $1 million to do things that they feel are vital to the community, every one of them. We've got them down to a number here that we think council will accept. It's been mentioned earlier. Sometimes we don't get all our work done. I go around, I'm saying, what's going on? How are we doing? I think Dennis has just told you. He has his engineering technicians. They're busy. We have some large, very important projects to the community that are going to happen in 2020. I guess I just have to say to council, if you want my opinion, I think for 1 year, $100,000, yes, there'll be roads that people say, there goes my road again. Yes, that's true. But we can't do everything. We can't overwork our people. This is a year where we're coming forward $100,000. If you want to give more, that's fine, but I will tell council, every director here would be saying, if we're going to open up more money, boy, I could sure use another, literally, I'm going to say $1 million. That's probably what our budget shortfall is annually. We know that, about $3 million. You have 3 directors, but I understand you. I'm just saying I would be cautious giving people more work than they can handle now. I don't know how else to put it.
So I apologize that I didn't realize that it took so much engineering time to do this. I'm just looking at the paving stuff, so I'm not thinking about the rest of it. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, reiterate.
And it's manpower, I'm sure.
Yeah, internal capacity is what it is, comes down to, is we still have to go and inspect it, measure everything up. You have to monitor the contractor, what he's doing, make sure the asphalt does meet standard. We have big projects like this year. We've had guys working till 10 o'clock at night, weekends, whatever. When something happens, they have to be available. And they start feeling they've been pushing, but they're starting to feel the wear and tear as well. So, and we know next year is going to be, 10th Street Bridge is going to be big. The lift station, there's some big projects that we have to do. 16th Street is a big project, high used area. Again, it's going to be a lot of, they're going to have to be there quite a bit of a time. So there's only so many hours in a day, and we still want them to enjoy our summers a bit too. So,
Travis.
Thank you. My concern, and I understand that you're busy, and I guess that'd be the question, if you were unable to take on any more than $100,000, which is going to do 3 of those areas, you've shown 6 locations that have a completely zero failed road.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, when there's doing such big capital projects, with whether it's 10th Bridge or 16th Street, and I said this at council before, there's been individuals in this community who have said, no one has came to 6th Avenue East on my street since 1975 when I lived here. It's completely demolished, and you're going to say, well, yes, it's great you're seeing other things. I still think with the capital position that we're in, we've got extra funding, that this would have been something we would have tried to give back to some people on arterial roads. We do a lot of arterial road repavement. We do it on, we've done 10th Street, we do it on 9th Avenue, we're going to do it on 16th Street. A lot of those areas are great because they're the ones that get the most amount of traffic. But if I'm sitting on the end of my house and I'm saying, I'm paying $6,000 of taxes and I haven't seen a benefit from anything, besides, yes, you can say, yeah, everyone gets a shared benefit on 16th Street. I thought this year, to be honest, we were in a position where we could have actually pushed more money into non-arterial roads. Because to be honest, when we all do door-to-door, and I know that's the hard part that no one likes to hear, but when we do door-to-door, the biggest complaint that anyone still has is garbage and roads. So what do you do to fix that? I think when we have availability in reserves or a capital project to overfund those, especially asphalt, it's just mind-boggling. Like I said this before, we're on a 100-year plan. Like, when is that going to come to the point where we're like, what is going on? Like, I get frustrated with the fact that. And I see here that, yes, we're going to put 400, 500, 600, 700, which is great, but you're presented 6 things here that we recognize that they completely failed for $250,000. We're allocating $100,000 to it. We've got $52,000, I think, left over from what we've rejected so far. We put away $150,000 last year. For what purpose? Yes, to go to help towards some bigger projects, offset a roof, offset debenture payments in the future. But we also need to think about, geez, we're cutting ourselves instantly on failed roads in our community. And I have the opportunity, and I would ask yourself and your directors, if you 100% say that you're maxed, you cannot take any more resurfacing, say it to me. I'll get off the topic. I'll request to make that $50,000 reserved for a year when you're not. But if you aren't maxed and you feel that's a capability that you can do, then I would ask that we do that. If not, I'll step back. But I just, from what I hear from people, is that our roads are done. When I see 6 are completely failed, that's a struggle for me.
Go ahead, Carol.
Just to piggyback onto that, so there is a human resource element towards expanding past the 6. Do you have any suggestions on how that could be accommodated even in the short term to allow for more projects to go forward?
Well, I think, some of the projects that Councillor Dodd brought up do have some third-party funding associated with them. So when we do get them, 10th Street Bridge is $3 million. 16th Avenue is, again, another one, 16th Street, is, another almost $933,000. So we have to get those done. I mean, the whole idea here was, okay, our staff is being pushed quite a bit with these downtown River Precinct, 10th Street Bridge, all the stuff that we've done even the year prior with East Bayshore Road. You could add us more money, we'd probably get it done, but again, I'd have guys working long hours, and I mean, what we're trying to do is chip away at these streets. I mean, it's $100,000, we'll chip away at it, and the thing is that if it's not this year, then next year we'll be able to get back into another paving program and add that $50,000 and keep chipping away at this. Do some big ones, but also keep chipping away at these small ones. And that's what I would suggest is, it's tough to get it all done all the time. And, like Wayne said, we'd all like $1 million more. It'd be great. I just wish I had maybe another 2 or 3 people to help spend that $1 million.
But that goes back to my question. What strategies can we put in place, even in the short term, for the human resource shortage to achieve more than you put forward? I realize that would probably have to come through operational, but we've identified that it's a potential priority for a variety of reasons. You've identified that there's an HR shortage to achieving that. What can be done to help to make a balance?
Well, I think one thing you always have to be cautious about is saying, okay, well, let's get 2 or 3 more people, but is that sustainable? That'll have a huge impact on our things. We're trying to work with what we have. And the things you'll find, if you start adding more people, hey, we might need them right now, but in 2 or 3 years, we're not going to need them. So let's build a program. We have targets. We try and achieve our targets. Keep using the same targets from year to year. And I feel your pain, because I've had neighbors come, they find out who I am. They live 2 streets down. They want to do 29th. Can you do 29th? They said, yeah, we can suggest it. We'll go back to our condition assessment to see where it stands. I mean, wish we could do them all in 1 year. Wish we could do them all, but it's just not realistic.
So are you saying that we don't have the ability to short-term contract staff, recognizing you don't want to increase on an ongoing basis, the bottom line of an operational staffing budget, but do we have, or have we ever, done short-term contracts that are project-specific that would allow this to move forward?
This is a tough one. Like for big projects, yes, we get a consultant, we hire them, they do the inspection. We have to do our inspection on behalf of us. But a project like this, if I hired a consultant for the summer, I'm spending, what do you think, Chris? $50,000, $100,000 at their rates.
Probably be somewhere in the range of 20% of the capital cost.
Yeah, so let's say, so I mean, really, there would be costs, so that means we'd be paying a consultant, and then we have to eliminate one of the roads on here. So is it money well spent? I think we just be patient and say we're going to chip away at this list of 6 right now. We're going to provide the list up to 30 or how many they are, but let's chip away this year. 2021 will be upon us before you know it. And again, maybe our paving program, asphalt reserve program, will be that much bigger because we don't have to worry about 16th Street. We don't have to worry about the bridge, and then we could take on more.
Scott?
Thanks. And I would just, what's your measurement of a lane kilometer? That's 2 lane width, right?
Well, you're looking at it, depends, like when you say a linear meter of road, like you can say it's 8.5 or 10 meters depending on the roadway. So, if you look at the numbers, you can say it's maybe $250 a linear meter. Or, that's just pure asphalt. That's nothing underneath, that's just resurfacing. So then if you include the concrete structures on both sides, the number starts climbing. Catch basin repairs, the number starts climbing.
In our plans though, transportation plan, we refer to it as lane kilometers.
Lane kilometers.
That's in single lane or 2 lane?
Lane kilometers are actually like a lane.
Okay,
So
single
it's-
lane.
yeah,
It's,
so if
I
you-
know, I mean, how I explain this, I mean, if we can find the funds to fulfill what's on that schedule there, that's great. I'd love to see us do that. But when I'm talking to the public, you know, I'm referencing the fact that we're completing 4 lanes from 9th Avenue to 18th Avenue East, is that correct? Just further east? Just west. So that's a lot of asphalt. I mean, you put that into perspective, that might be somewhat akin to re-asphalting everything off south of 6th Street on 7th Avenue East and all the side streets. Like, that's a lot of work. It goes a long way. So I can appreciate it's not overly appealing when you look at just because it's one big street. It doesn't seem like much, but on the whole, if you applied that amount of lane kilometer in terms of one specific area, you could tell people, we're paving everything in Malibu Hill, like, and then some. We're doing everything from 24th Street. So I think this is great.
So by my count, I've got 20 minutes before I'm going to call a curfew, so I'm going to keep moving forward here. Richard, you had something to say.
Yeah, Your Worship, my only point was going to be, we've just had a great discussion. It's taken us 20 minutes, and there's not a single motion on the table as a result of that. These are all important issues, but they are not capital budget discussion issues. They're Operations Committee issues, they're council issues. Can we keep moving forward and work on motions, Your Worship, and get through this agenda? We're going to be here for another month at the rate we're going.
Thank you. All the pressure's on you, Dennis.
Thank you. Concrete replacement annual program, looking to spend about 75.
Wait a second. No, wait a second. Sorry.
Okay. Then
Mike, I had to ask a question, and I'm sorry. My question was, has staff, can you tell me, if you're at your max capacity and you can't take it, and your answer was yes, and I never got a chance to reply back.
Okay.
So, if that is the case, then yes, I will stay off your back about saying we're pushing on this plan. But all I wanted to hear was actually, if you're at your capacity, that we're not going to take on any more road resurfacing, I'll stop being the guy in the ear, being the broken record, saying we need to put more national resurfacing if we can't do it. If we're maxed out on it, that's all I needed to hear. So, if I would have make a motion on that, and I still would. I feel it very strongly on it, but if that's what you're saying, we can't do it, then we can't do it, and I'll hold it off, and I'll push it off to the next year.
thank you.
Concrete replacement program, again, $75,000, just about what we normally do is play a bit of catch-up, and that's what we plan for 2020. 10th Street Bridge, it's ongoing.
Yeah. Motion to say no.
Well, there has been some, I'm not going to talk, Wayne's going to tell me to speed up. Downtown 10th Street corridor traffic signal control system. You've seen this last year. It's for several years. We have put got new equipment installed this year that's really helping us out with the detour route, with the MyoVision and its cameras. It really identifies the traffic. We've got them working on some engineering for us as well to help us out. Even with the traffic coming from the Bay Shore after a hockey game, we have identified that, which reaches like peak hours of an afternoon, so we're going to help us with our timings associated with that. And again, this coming year, we plan to spend another approximately $300,000, again, to help us with more equipment and to get us ready for when the 10th Street Bridge, or 10th Street is open again, to help us with the improved traffic flows along 10th Street.
Scott, you had your hand up.
Going back to about 2016, 2017, we had capital allotments to the 10th Street corridor, traffic signal control system. It's varied in terms of the title, but it was not in the tens of thousands of dollars. It was in the 6 figures, and well into the 6 figures. An instance of that was the application of 5,000 or 10,000 of it went towards offsetting the cost of a traffic impact study on the West Hill or the OSDSS site plan, and that was being funded by pulling the funds from the 10th Street corridor allotment. So I have a sincere interest in knowing what's happened to those funds over the last 3 years. We had some significant dollars put aside there, and it's just vanished. It's evaporated here. Like,
So
where'd it go?
are you moving to go ahead with this?
Yes, I'll put that on the table.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table not to go ahead with
No,
this.
I will phrase the motion to go ahead with it pending unless earlier allocations on the 10th Street corridor, because we are deserving of a report for information for new members too.
Then move to ask for the report
Then I will move to ask for the report.
Okay.
on where the past spending was spent.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. In past years, there was apparently budgeting on doing this work on 10th Street, and he wants to know where the money went.
Chris might be able to answer it right away, or we can provide a report at a later date. How's that? Pardon?
He's got a motion to get a report on it.
Okay, so we'll do a report at a later date.
Okay, so who's in favor of that report? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's the report. Okay, in front of us, we have $300,000 to be spent this year. Are we going ahead with it or not?
Okay.
Not seeing any opposition.
16th Street, 9th Avenue East, 18th Avenue East. Again, this work does entail, it does have about $933,000 worth of Connecting Link funding. We did have $100,000 left over from this year that we didn't use, that we were putting towards our share of the actual surfacing. There is pipe on there. There is pipe that's 70 years old, and other sections where it's 50 years old, water pipe. The 50-year-old stuff is in rough shape, it's pitted, it's the type of backfill they use and how they backfilled, so there's no way we should be actually paving this road and expecting that pipe to last the duration of the asphalt surfacing. So our original submission did include that, but then when we talked to MTO, they said, listen, just concentrate on the surfacing, so that's how it goes forward, because they wouldn't pay for any of the additional work, like any of the water work or sewer work, and this work also includes a portion of sidewalk. There's a little break in the sidewalk, so that's what it's including. So, good. 9th Street, 9th Avenue East from 22nd Street to 23rd Street. Again, we're looking for the engineering to take place this year. And it's actually the redevelopment of the whole street, so the engineering will take place this year with potential construction, first phase of construction taking place in 2021, and then the subsequent years of 2023. Again, this will all be based on how the area fills out in terms of development, but we want to get the engineering done and have it ready to go. Downtown River Precinct, just a bit of carryover or additional funding for next year, just in case there's some stuff that has to be done in terms of the maintenance period, really dealing with engineering and anything, small things that may be required to be done. 3rd Avenue East, maintenance period, again, this work was done last year. We normally carry about $10,000. It usually deals with manholes, cammering, a bit of engineering work. East Bay Shore Road, this is one that's kind of links in with the east side pumping station. You can see we need a bit of funding, about $50,000 to continue with the road design. The county will pay for most of this resurfacing of this area, but we want to bring this up to a rural, an urban cross-section, including sidewalk on one side to tie in future development areas with pedestrian access, and again put curb and gutter where it's required. So this is all tying in with what the county is doing. They won't pay for the concrete work. That's something that the city will have to contribute towards. So we need $50,000 for 2021.
So questions? Good
Free-
question. Go ahead. Question there, Dennis. Sorry.
It's just a question, like, how much foot traffic is out that way?
Potentially there would be quite a bit. This sidewalk or pedestrian access, we're looking at sidewalk would actually be able to link up the Kiwanis soccer pitches as well until such time as the place is, the area is fully developed. If you drive out along East Bay Shore, the houses that are further down just north of the old Goodyear site, you'll see a lot of pedestrian traffic from the people that are there. You'll see kids on bikes. It's the whole idea is this road will be wide enough to have almost like bike lanes or paved shoulders on the side to create a more safer environment for everyone that's out there. I would suggest just taking a drive out there Saturday morning.
I know, I'm just looking at this picture, I'm like,
Oh, I know,
yeah.
Brock, I think if you go back probably 25 or more years, there's a plan, this is city, a lot of it's city-owned property with a plan to make it into a park. We've never got there. And you've potentially got the development of the RCA property that would bring a lot of people in there. So you're, and interestingly enough, our city limit's a long way out. A lot of houses out there on that side of town, different from the west side.
Yeah. Freedom Trail slope protection, $5,000. We want to address some of the, we did all this work last year, but again, we noticed that some of the slopes require some protection and some repairs. It's really to do with erosion, so we just want to address that to make sure we can fulfill the life expectancy of the trail that was done in 2018. Pedestrian crossovers, you saw this one last year, you've seen it again this year. What we're planning on doing is, what we do is we're going to continue with this, you can see this from year to year, and introducing different improvements for different school crossing, guard locations, and pedestrian crossings. So we do have the one on 6th and 10th that we're planning on doing this year. If we don't get it done by this year, we'll do it next year, but we won't ask to carry over the funding. We'll just have the $25,000. If we get it done, then we'll be looking at doing 9th Avenue and 15th Street A and possibly 8th Street East and 4th Avenue East. Stormwater backflow protection program, again, people do take advantage of this. It's not as popular as you think, but we do end up spending $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And again, it's about disconnecting your storm, like your downspouts and everything from your sanitary sewer. Oops, sorry. 17th Street East catchment area. This is an annual reserve fund contribution until such time as we actually go ahead with the project. And Chris, when do you think we might go ahead with that project?
I think it's 2023.
So
engineering, construction, engineering 1 year, construction the next.
Yeah. So it's a reserve contribution.
Books for a long time.
Kelso Park drainage channel. You know, with all the high waters and all the wave action we've seen this year, that channel from the pedestrian bridge leading out into, I guess, the bay has actually shown a lot of deterioration. So what we plan on doing is actually creating armor walls on both sides. Right now, you can see by that picture, we've actually put up these great big tonneau bags filled with sand to help protect the shoreline. Depending, we look at spreading work over 2 years just because of the amounts. It's in-water work. It could potentially be in-water work. If it is, we have gone to quote. It'll be close to $275,000 to $300,000. And if we don't have to take the precautions of putting coffer dams in, we might be able to get all the work done in 1 year. But we're erring on the side of caution, and this work has to be done.
Go ahead, John.
I appreciate the work needs to be done. Is there a plan? Like, can we ask you later for a plan? Like,
I have created a design, yes.
okay, it's $300,000 plus, and
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's purely, I've created a design that's building off what's already there with the armor stone and what would hold up better to what it was placed previously, and gone out for a quote from a contractor that does this sort of work, so at least this is a number that we can work with. And like I said, if we don't have to take the precautions of building coffer dams and working in the water, we can do it for less than that.
I mean, somebody mentioned it to me that Kelso is really starting on Potawatomi River by Kelso Pines, or no, Kelso Villa there. You know what I'm talking about, that
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
This is really global warming at its worst locally, really. So I'm just wondering if there's a plan, a design that's going to be multi-year and so forth.
Well, we were talking, Pam and myself, Adam, Doug, we all met out there. There are things that we can do, and I've explored different things to help shoreline protection in terms of what we're seeing is the wave action. We should be expecting some more tomorrow. We expect waves up to 2 meters in height just because of and it's all wind generated, high water and wind generated. So we were talking, I mean, we have some beautiful areas out there. They're beach areas. It's the only sandy beach we have within our community. You know, this is the first phase. Like, we're dealing with the drainage channel right now. We're going to build that up. I can do some work with our own forces leading from the pedestrian bridge to the outfall. But, you know, in the future, we're going to sit down this coming year and look at other things. One big thing is probably putting a breakwater in to protect that beach. So, I mean, I'm looking at other things that they've done in other areas, and it takes... It's going to take money, but this is an asset. This is you know, Wayne will say it, and I'm not just trying to suck up to Wayne, but, you know, when I went to move to town, I wasn't saying, oh, well, hey, Chris, what's the condition and index of the asphalt? I mean, asphalt's asphalt. You're going to fix it. Oh, the sewers are old. You're going to replace them. But we were looking at being on the water, the features, the parks, the trails. I mean, that's what attracted us to Owen Sound. It wasn't whether our roads were, you know, we knew we can fix roads in my whole life, but that beach is, it's a nice area, and we got to look at how we can protect it, especially if we continue to have this high water that we're experiencing. So, anyways, this is the first phase. We've got to get the channel done. If not, what it's doing, it's eroding, it's robbing us of land right now. If you go out there, you can see where the land was and where it's not, and because it's eroding it, so we want to put something in place where we can actually start recovering some of the land and build up the beach again. And then we have to do something to make sure we protect the beaches. So this is phase one. Sorry, I took too much time on that one. But, oh, yes, Kenny Drain, pond number 4. I think one of our esteemed councillors brought this to our attention. So we actually had a drone fly over it. And you can see the colored picture. It's doing quite well. It was supposed to be growing some sort of vegetation. So it's been, I think, 20 years since we haven't really done anything. So this is a major project. So next year, it plays a big part in our stormwater management system, so we have to actually clean it out. So next year we need about 20 grand to determine what's in there and what we can do with the material that's been deposited over the years. If it comes back nice and clean, we can bring the stuff to the Derby landfill. If it comes back where there's stuff in it that we can't, then we're going to have to make the appropriate plans to haul it somewhere else. So that's what we want to do in 2020. We want to ascertain what's actually in there and what has to be done and where it has to be taken. And then the subsequent year, we'll look at cleaning it out. This is just a regular, what we normally do is a bit of a maintenance period. This is from the Kenny Drain from the previous year. So again, some small construction work, a bit of in-house engineering just to clean it up. Anything that may have not been addressed in the first couple of phases. This is putting money aside for a service agreement that we plan to do with the developer of the area on 9th Avenue, at 226 on 9th Avenue. They're planning to develop as soon as next year. The whole idea would be enter a service agreement with them where they would cover the cost of installing the necessary sanitary and storm sewers needed to service the property in order for them to develop it. And again, this is part of the maintenance period for the Synod. Oh, sorry.
Would there be any portion of this that would be DCable?
We have recovered some costs through development charges from the adjacent property owners already. And even these individuals will owe us about $292,000 as part of their development charges for this specific area. So in the out-of-pocket expenses, we anticipate to be in the, I guess, probably $57,000 to $60,000 once it's all said and done. Again, maintenance period. Again, maintenance period.
If I could just ask, when we're discussing maintenance periods, are we capitalizing operational costs here? Mainly those costs coming out of the engineering?
No, these are costs that, not really, no. I mean, this is stuff that, it's usually, you never account for it and then you're scrambling to find the money to do it. And it's all part of the original capital costs. So there's always something that lingers for a year or two after the project. And again, whether in this specific case it's going out and doing walking with the engineer, design engineer, to say, here's what it is. They go do an assessment, here's the outstanding issues associated with the maintenance period, we have to pay them. So, and they are out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay, so these are not overly internal then?
No, in some cases, we do, in-house engineering, $500, design or engineering, $9,500. So our stuff is usually a fraction of what we expend with other consultants, or maybe a contractor if they have to camera a line. Say it was an area where we put sanitary sewers in, we have to camera a line.
Okay, thanks.
Street light general, again, $25,000. This is ongoing, isn't it, Chris? Annual thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Decorative Street Light Reserve contribution. Again, this year we do have a big program in place that we're currently doing. Probably finish it up after the started on the 900 block. We'll continue to work towards it because these lights need to be replaced, and we're replacing them with the LED lights that are dark sky compliant. So the whole idea is the light shines down as opposed to going up. And what we're doing is we're replacing them with the concrete poles versus the steel poles, which will hold up much better to our salt that we use on our roadways. This year we're asking for some GPS survey equipment. Some is $10,000. This will allow us to do our own survey in-house. It's not just Public Works, but GIS can use it. The individuals up at Public Works can use it as well. It's not a large amount, but this is equipment. It was a much larger number in the past, I think 25,000. Now we've found equipment that we can cost $10,000 where we can do the work. Again, downstairs in our bullpen, maybe it's not our bullpen, it's really our engineering room where we have our printer and all our records that are sitting in boxes. So we're requesting an amount to purchase some shelving to help organize that area better, just make it more user-friendly. And fleet is next.
So you're at an end?
Pardon?
Fleet.
Fleet.
I wonder, it's now 4:45. I have to be at an appointment at 4. If this isn't the best time to break, because once we get into this, it'll probably be more than 15 minutes to get it done anyway. I've got to be somewhere at 4. I can't do it. Sorry. So, Kate, I assume we're going to, Kate and Brianna, I assume we're going to have to pick another day to finish capital, or do we add that to our operations day and then?
We have 2 days booked, the 10th and the 11th, for operations, so I'm sure we can finish this last section of capital either before or after those meetings.
Okay, Brian?
Is there any chance we can get up in the morning and start when normal people start? And maybe at 8 o'clock or 8:30? Like, we've lost an hour and a half this morning for no reason at all. I don't know why we start at 9:30. I thought if we're starting at 9:30, then that would mean that we're at least going to finish by 2 or 3. If it's, like, I just find this ridiculous.
We can start at 9. I would recommend, like, 8:30 might be tough, just you never know what happens first thing in the morning, but.
That'd be great. Or 8:30, but I don't know. I just think we...
So,
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any problem getting this into our operating day based on the time that we spent last year.
9 o'clock then, on the
10th and 11th.
And 11th. Okay. So basically, we have yet to finish engineering, then we environmental services. Oh, they're fleet and then environmental services. Police, number 6 in our agenda isn't done. Summary and wrap up. We're going to wrap up when we wrap up. So if we can have a motion, I think, Marion, have you got them? Who's got them? Somebody had them that the Committee of the Whole Rise and Report.
Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried. Motions to adopt.
Moved by myself that, and seconded by Councillor Hamley, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering the draft 2020 capital budget be confirmed by this council.
And all in favor? And that is...
Should that say, because that's saying the whole capital budget, should it say a portion of, or, I don't know.
Consideration of the
Okay, it's fine.
action taken of the whole, considering the draft budget to be confirmed, so it doesn't say that we've completed it, so
Okay.
we're okay. Did I call that? All in favor? Just to cover that. Just one bylaw, which is confirmation of today's proceedings.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hamley, that bylaw number 2019-187 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? Carried. So that completes what we've done so far today. It's now 12 minutes to 4. We're completed. Thanks.